Chapter 3:26. Amidst the white smoke, a chubby and adorable baby jumped out. The baby's fair and tender body was wearing a red cloth sack. Its head was tied into a tiny braid. Whose child was left here? Li Xian couldn't help but mutter when he saw how chubby and adorable the baby was. However, on careful thought, he realized that something was amiss. The baby was only the size of a baby, but it could walk on its own. Furthermore, it was very agile. No baby was that impressive. The baby widened its eyes at them as though it was very angry. It was as though it was warning them with its eyes not to approach. Could this be? Wang Lu's expression changed slightly when she saw the baby. Wang Lu, do you know what this baby is? Li Xian hurriedly asked. I once followed my elders to the Changbai Mountain Dimensional Zone to hunt dimensional creatures. There, I once saw a plant-type ginseng baby. That ginseng baby was the size of a human baby. It wore a cloth sack and had a few ginseng leaves growing on its head. It looked very similar to this baby, but there were some differences, Wang Lu said as she sized up the baby. Ginseng baby, is that the legendary ginseng essence? Will it be very nourishing after eating it? Li Xian's eyes immediately lit up as he stared at the baby. The baby seemed to sense the ill intentions in Li Xian's eyes. The baby glared at Li Xian before turning around and disappearing. No good. Retreat. Wang Lu's expression changed slightly as she immediately retreated. Although Zhou Wen and Li Xian didn't know what was going on, they retreated when they saw Wang Lu's solemn expression. However, just as Li Xian moved, he suddenly felt as though he had tripped over something. With a plop, he fell to the ground. The baby appeared not far away and clapped as he watched Li Xian chuckle. He looked extremely happy. Little thing, do you think I can't deal with you? I don't care if you were a ginseng baby or a ginseng baby. I'll teach you a lesson now. Li Xian got up, summoned the Thunder God sword, and slashed at the baby. The Thunder God sword instantly arrived in front of the baby, but the baby suddenly vanished. The lightning sword beam blasted open a huge crater in the ground, but it didn't find the baby. Thump! Li Xian felt his legs being tripped by something again as he fell to the ground with a plop. When he turned his head, he saw half of the baby's body poking out from the ground. He jumped out and clapped his hands as he smiled at Li Xian, his face filled with mockery. How could Li Xian tolerate this? He pounced forward to grab the doll, but no matter how fast he couldn't catch up to the doll. Instead, he was teased by the doll until he fell and crawled. He looked extremely pathetic. Wang Lu, is this really a ginseng baby? Zhou Wen asked as he sized up the baby in surprise. I don't know if that's the case or not, but from his appearance and abilities, he does resemble the ginseng baby. They both look like babies and are proficient in the Earth escape art. They can travel thousands of kilometers underground, and even a top-notch epic expert would find it difficult to catch them. Wang Lu paused for a moment before continuing. Back when my grandfather was capturing ginseng baby in Changbai Mountain, he used a doll companion beast as bait to lure the playful ginseng baby over. Then he used the intrinsic lock to catch him off guard before successfully capturing him. We don't have those things. Is there any way to capture him? Having seen the doll's Earth escape art, Zhou knew that it would be difficult to catch up to him, even if he used ghost steps. Perhaps, but I don't know. Wang Lu shook her head helplessly. Ginseng baby has the nickname Little Earth Immortal. As long as he's on the ground, I'm afraid no one can catch him. I don't know if this baby is a ginseng baby, but from his Earth escape art, it's in no way inferior to the ginseng baby I saw. As the two spoke, Li Xian was already flying into a rage for being teased. However, he couldn't touch the doll no matter what. He was like a clumsy bear that was led by the nose by the doll. Li Xian slashed with a Thunder God sword in his hand and even summoned a few companion beasts. He even summoned the spirit-drawing demoness that he had just obtained, but he was still helpless against the baby. The baby flashed left and right like a pixie that could teleport continuously. He played Li Xian and the companion beasts in the palm of his hand. Old Zhou, Wang Lu, aren't you going to help? Quickly capture this little thing. I have to spank him. Li Xian's face turned green from anger after being thrown a few more times. Zhou Wen found the baby's Earth escape art very interesting. Furthermore, He didn't seem to have any intention of harming anyone. He was only teasing Li Xian. With a thought, he activated Go Steps. Zhou Wen's figure seemed to teleport as he appeared behind the baby. At the instant he reached out to grab the baby's arm, the baby vanished. Wang Lu guessed where the baby would appear. She flashed over in an attempt to grab him, but she missed. The three of them used all kinds of methods to try and catch the little doll, but they were teased in circles. In the end, they fell to the ground in exhaustion, no longer having the strength to catch him. The little doll clapped its hands and laughed at them from not far away. Li Xian couldn't take it anymore as he chased after him. However, Zhou Wen and Wang Lu were really out of energy as they sat on the ground, unable to get up. What's the level of the ginseng baby you saw? Is his earth escape art that powerful? Zhou Wen asked Wang Lu. I wonder what level it is. Wang Lu shook her head and said, just as my grandfather caught the ginseng baby, the terrifying creature in Changbai Mountain suddenly appeared and nearly killed us there. The ginseng baby was also taken away by the terrifying creature. I never expected the map given by Earth Lord to be such a thing. Even if we find him, we don't have the ability to take him away. Zhou Wen looked at the baby and frowned in silence. Indeed, he didn't have the ability to capture the baby unless he could make the baby's body leave the ground and prevent him from using Earth escape art. Zhou Wen secretly held the banana fan in his hand and waited for an opportunity. Li Xian pounced around, but he didn't even touch the baby's cloth bag. Instead, he left huge craters in the ground. After Li Xian fell again, the baby clapped his hands happily. His chubby calves jumped up as he looked very excited. Now, at the instant the baby jumped up, the banana fan in Zhou Wen's hand fanned out a gust of cold wind, immediately sending the ginseng baby flying. Haha, let's see where you can run to. Li Xian was overjoyed as he pounced forward, hoping to grab the baby that had been sent flying. Chapter 327. The baby was swept up by the Grandine wind, and indeed couldn't use Earth escape. White frost formed on his body as Li Xian rushed forward and grabbed his arm. The baby's body was cold as he closed his eyes and remained motionless. Even his eyebrows were covered in frost, as though he had been frozen. There's no heartbeat. Don't tell me he's frozen to death? Li Xian couldn't help but stare at the baby when he didn't sense the baby's heartbeat. Although this was a dimensional creature, it looked too much like a human baby. Furthermore, he was only teasing the three of them and didn't harm them. Li Xian didn't really plan on killing him. He won't die so easily, right? Zhou Wen touched the baby's neck, and indeed, there was no pulse. Are the two of you stupid? If he's really a creature like a ginseng baby, he's a plant to begin with. How can he have a heartbeat? Wang Lu rolled her eyes. Then take a look. Is this baby dead? Li Xian handed the baby to Wang Lu. Wang Lu reached out to take it when she saw the baby suddenly open his eyes. Taking advantage of the moment they relaxed while they were doing the exchange, he suddenly broke free and landed on the ground, disappearing. When he appeared again, he was already more than 10 meters away. He was standing on a rock and making faces at the three of them. This baby is so cunning. Li Xian was about to rush over again, but he was held back by Zhou Wen. Forget it. Let him go. Zhou Wen really couldn't steel himself to kill such a creature. It was useless even if he was captured. Li Xian nodded and said with a smile, at least Wang Lu and I gained some benefits. You didn't gain anything from this map. From the looks of it, our luck is indeed better. By the way, Wang Lu, what's the use of a ginseng baby dropping a companion beast? I heard that ginseng baby companion beasts have very powerful primordial energy recovery abilities and also have healing-type primordial energy skills. It greatly increases one's combat strength, but it's just too rare. There are quite a lot of ginseng babies in Changbai Mountain, but most of them are at the legendary stage. Their abilities are relatively poor. Epic ginseng babies are very rare. According to my grandfather, if one has an epic ginseng baby companion beast, they can basically use primordial energy skills indefinitely. Wang Lu glanced at the distant baby and said, however, the ginseng baby should have ginseng leaves on its head, but this baby doesn't. I don't think he's a ginseng baby, but a plant-type dimensional creature. Since ginseng babies are so useful, we really have to make a trip to Changbai Mountain in the future and get some ginseng babies, Li Xian said. How can it be that easy? The dimensional zones in Changbai Mountain have dimensional creatures like ginseng babies that don't have any offensive abilities, but most dimensional creatures are extremely terrifying. Ignoring an epic ginseng baby, it won't be easy to obtain a legendary ginseng baby after entering. You might even lose your life. Many people risk their lives to enter Changbai Mountain to hunt ginseng babies. If they can obtain a legendary ginseng baby companion egg, they can sell it for an astronomical price. Wang Lu clearly didn't believe that entering Changbai Mountain was a good idea. Apart from ginseng babies, are there any better companion beasts with healing abilities? Zhou Wen had always wanted a companion beast with healing abilities, but it was too rare. Healing abilities are relatively rare to begin with. Ginseng babies are considered one of the better ones. Although there are others, they aren't easy to obtain. For example, Lingji horses are even rarer than ginseng babies. It's even more difficult to hunt them. There are also some with natural healing abilities, such as a certain type of angel in the West District and the alchemy furnace in our East District. There are relatively few of them, so they are similarly difficult to obtain, Wang Lu said after some thought. The trio chatted as they walked, planning on returning to the city. When the baby saw that they were leaving, he used Earth Escape to run around them. He made faces at them and clapped his hands as though he was provoking them. However, Zhou Wen and company didn't wish to kill him, so they ignored him and continued walking forward. Seeing the trio ignore him, the baby was very disappointed. He was like a child who had lost his beloved toy. His face was filled with disappointment as he watched Zhou Wen and company leave. Boom! As Zhou Wen and company walked, they suddenly heard an explosion. They turned around and saw a hole in the ground where the baby had been standing. A monster that was half the height of a person and looked like a rat or a rabbit, with black fur that resembled silk, had bitten the baby's arm and was dragging him into the hole. Zhou Wen frowned slightly as he activated ghost steps. At the same time, he slashed out a demonic astral wheel and sealed the rat that was retreating into the hole. The rat reacted very quickly. It exerted strength in its legs and dodged the demonic astral wheel. It dragged the baby into the bushes in the forest. Li Xian's Thunder God's sword slashed over as well. A bolt of lightning descended, forcing the rat to change its escape trajectory. Wang Lu's tiger also pounced over and chased after the rat. The rat was abnormally fast. Zhou Wen used ghost steps to chase it, but it managed to dodge it a few times. It seemed to have some kind of primordial energy skill that increased its speed. However, after using it a few times, the rat's primordial energy seemed to be unable to keep up. It was nearly struck by the Thunder God's sword's lightning. It let go of the baby and fled into the forest. Watch him. I'll be back soon. Zhou Wen chased after the rat. The rat was likely at the epic stage, but its abilities seemed somewhat special. It wasn't a dimensional creature with relatively strong offensive abilities. Perhaps there would be special gains. Furthermore, this wasn't a dimensional zone, yet it had appeared here. It was already considered a breakout creature. It was best to eliminate it. The rat ran very quickly, but its primordial energy couldn't keep up. When it ran into a valley, it was killed by Zhou Wen. There was a crystal in its body. Zhou Wen took it out and saw that it was a skill crystal. Zhou Wen picked up the primordial energy skill crystal and was about to leave when he saw a shadow flash on the ground. The baby had appeared. His arm that had been bitten by the rat had already healed. It looked like he was fine. The baby looked at the killed rat and then at Zhou Wen. He seemed to hesitate for a moment before running in front of Zhou Wen and pulling at the corner of his pants with his tiny hand. Be careful in the future. No one will save you the next time. Although Zhou Wen wouldn't be fooled by its cute appearance, this fellow looked too much like a human child. He really couldn't bring himself to kill it. However, the baby didn't let go. He tugged at Zhou Wen's pants and babbled. He even pointed into the valley with his tiny finger. Don't tell me you want to scam me. Zhou Wen naturally understood what the baby meant. It wanted him to walk into the valley. It was unknown if the baby understood him, but he continued tugging at Zhou Wen's pants and pointed into the valley as he spoke. After some hesitation, Zhou saw that the valley wasn't a dimensional zone. Furthermore, it was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. There was no path inside, so there shouldn't be too much danger. After some thought, he walked in to see what the baby was up to. Chapter 328. When the baby saw Zhou walk into the valley, he released his pants and skipped ahead to lead the way. The valley wasn't deep. After walking for less than half a kilometer, they reached the end. The baby pushed aside the grass in front of the mountain wall, revealing a hole that was half the height of a person. "If you want to crawl in, I definitely won't," Zhou thought to himself as he saw the baby crawl in and vanish. Zhou waited for a while, but the baby didn't come out. Instead, Li Xian and Wang Lu chased after following the traces. "Zhou, that baby ran away by himself. What are you doing here?" Li Xian asked in puzzlement when he saw Zhou standing in front of the mountain wall without fighting any dimensional creatures. "I saw that baby. He lured me here before crawling into this hole," Zhou said as he pointed at the cave in the grass. Just as Li Xian was about to say something, he saw the baby peek his head out of the hole. His hand seemed to be dragging something. It looked very strenuous as his face flushed red. After a few tugs, the baby finally dragged something out of the hole. The 3 of them stared at the thing the baby was pulling. They saw that it was a vine or root of an unknown plant. The baby was pulling the vine with all his might. The vine was stretched taut, as though it was pulling something very heavy. When Zhou saw this, he reached out to grab the vine and help the baby pull it out. He was immediately alarmed. He originally imagined that the baby was weak, making it difficult to pull, but when he pulled, he felt that it was indeed very heavy. Even with all his strength, he could barely pull it out. The vine was pulled out more than a meter long, but he still couldn't see what was inside. Wang Lu and Li Xian came over to help. The 4 of them finally pulled out the vine completely and saw something tied to the other end of the vine. "What's this?" Li Xian looked at the thing they had pulled out, but he couldn't tell what it was. He couldn't help but turn to look at the baby. The baby was babbling and gesticulating, but the 3 of them still didn't understand what he meant. Zhou carefully sized up the item tied by the withered vines. It looked like a large walnut, about the size of football. It looked like a walnut, but from its texture, it was a metallic blackish-gray color. "Is this an iron walnut?" Li Xian tapped the Thunder God's sword's hilt twice and heard the sound of metal clashing. Then, he looked at Wang Lu and asked, "Wang Lu, do you know what this is?" Wang Lu shook her head as well. "I think it looks like a walnut, but I've never heard of a metal-like walnut." As the 3 of them were studying it, the baby pointed at Zhou and then at the walnut, babbling something. "Do you want to give this to me?" Zhou asked the doll. He was only guessing. Seeing that Zhou finally understood, the child hurriedly nodded. "All right." Although Zhou didn't know what it was, it looked like it had some origins. Since it was a free gift, he might as well accept it. However, it was just too heavy. Zhou had no choice but to summon the mutated stone. The few of them worked together to move the metal walnut onto its back before getting the mutated stone to carry it back. After the 3 of them walked out of the valley, the doll watched them from afar. It had no intention of following them. "This little fellow is rather interesting. Unfortunately, it's a dimensional creature." Li Xian shook his head. Although there were people who reared dimensional creatures were different from companion beasts. There was no way to completely control their actions. Once they entered human society, there would be serious consequences if a problem occurred. Therefore, the Federation still maintained a stance against rearing dimensional creatures. However, there was no clear rule that forbade it. Zhou's rearing of the antelope and chick was done secretly. Thankfully, the other students and teachers always believed that the antelope had been brought out of Mount Laojun and wasn't aggressive, so they ignored Zhou. As for the chick, most people believed that it was Zhou's companion beast. By the time the 3 of them returned to school, the sky was almost dark. The main reason was that the metal walnut was just too heavy. The stone chi couldn't run fast while carrying it, so they could only walk slowly. After returning to his dorm, Zhou carefully moved the metal walnut down and placed it in the living room. Then, He took out his mysterious phone and took a picture of the metal walnut, hoping to see if the mysterious phone could tell what it was. However, Zhou was quickly disappointed. The mysterious phone didn't react, indicating that it wasn't something from the dimension. It was very likely a native product of Earth. What on earth is this thing? Zhou took a few photos and sent them to Wang Mingyuan. With Wang Mingyuan's vast knowledge, perhaps he would know what it was. Wang Mingyuan was surprisingly free. After a while, he replied to Zhou, I can't confirm it just by looking at the photos. After I'm done with my research, you can send it over. I'll help you study it. Teacher, how's the progress of your research? Zhou had never known what Wang Mingyuan's research was. He only knew that he was studying something beneath Dragon's Well. It was very likely that he was studying the White Dragon. Originally, Zhou was somewhat worried that Wang Mingyuan would be killed by the White Dragon if he angered it. However, after seeing the power of his note, Zhou felt that his worries were unnecessary. A person like Wang Mingyuan wouldn't easily put himself in danger. It's going quite smoothly. However, I still encountered some small problems. I'm currently thinking of a way to resolve them. Wang Mingyuan sighed and said, Currently, there are signs all over the Federation that the chances of dimensional creatures breaking the restrictions are rapidly increasing. If this continues, dimensional zones might not have any restrictions on dimensional creatures in another 3 to 5 years. Or rather, they will be very weak. When the time comes, humanity's situation will be even more difficult than when the dimensional storms first erupted. This wasn't the first time Zhou had heard such words. And Sheng had said it to him in the past, but it wasn't as accurate as Wang Mingyuan's. Teacher, will the dimensional zone's restrictions really lose effect in 3 to 5 years? Zhou asked. It won't exceed 10 years at most. When the time comes, the dimensional zone's restrictions will definitely be completely ineffective, Wang Mingyuan answered with certainty. Only 10 years. Zhou felt that Wang Mingyuan wasn't the kind of person who spoke without thinking. If he said 10 years, the possibility was very high. In fact, 10 years refers to the dimensional zones completely losing their restrictions. During this period, the dimensional zone's restrictions will constantly decrease. Humanity's time isn't as long as 10 years. Wang Mingyuan paused for a moment before suddenly asking Zhou, Little one, if you had to choose between pain and death, which would you choose? Chapter 3:29. It depends on what kind of pain it is, Zhou said after some thought. Excruciating pain. Wang Mingyuan only said a few words. Zhou was momentarily at a loss for an answer. This was because the words excruciating pain were too general. He didn't know what it meant. He had never experienced such pain. Zhou felt that if it was physical pain, he could sometimes endure it, but some mental blows might be more unbearable than physical pain. As though he felt that he was being too general, Wang Mingyuan thought for a moment and said, Let's use a common analogy. If there's a woman you love very much, and she's being humiliated in front of you, but you don't have the ability to save her, there are two paths in front of you. One is to fight to the death. Even though you know you can't save her, you have to die to protect her. That way, you can have a clear conscience. The second path is to collude with those people and think of a way to protect her life. Then you can save her from her misery and kill those people to avenge her. If it were you, which would you choose? This question is really difficult to answer. Reason tells me that I should choose the second option, but I'm ultimately only one person. I'm afraid I don't have the mental endurance to complete the second choice. Therefore, I believe that if I were to encounter such a situation, I would probably choose the first option, Zhou said after some serious thought. Is that so? Wang Mingyuan's tone was somewhat odd. It was unknown if he was asking Zhou or himself. Teacher, what's the answer to this question? Zhou knew that some questions weren't limited to the question itself. If he was smart enough, he could think of other answers. Wang Mingyuan smiled and said, There's no answer. I've asked Jiang Yin and company this question. Haifeng's answer is the same as yours. Zia said that he would kill that woman first, so Jiang Yin chose the second option. Then what's your answer, teacher? Zhou asked curiously. I don't have an answer yet. Wang Mingyuan changed the topic and said, how's the situation at the Zhuolu battlefield? Have you found your former principal? Not yet. And Sheng called me a few times. Although he didn't say anything, I can sense that it wasn't going well. Perhaps he sacrificed a lot. Zhou Wen fell silent after saying that. And Sheng rarely contacted him recently, but Zhou Wen knew that the Yin family definitely wouldn't give up. They would definitely get someone to open the two palaces' doors. When that happened, there would definitely be losses. After all, the Yin family likely didn't have a mythical expert. They couldn't do much more than Zhou Wen. I recently learned some divination. Although I'm not very good at it, it seems to be of some use. So, I helped your old principal read his fortune. The divination showed that he was happy despite his bad luck. You should be fine for now, Wang Mingyuan said. After hanging up, Zhou Wen continued grinding dungeons. But no matter how he grinded, he didn't make much progress. Be it the white cocoon in the war wagon or the two palaces in the temple, they were things he couldn't conquer. Zhou Wen's strength seemed to have reached a bottleneck. Even if he learned more primordial energy skills or cultivated other primordial energy arts, it wouldn't be of much use. Zhou Wen felt that he couldn't continue grinding blindly. There was no point in brainlessly grinding, so he planned on organizing his thoughts. Zhou Wen, Legendary Life Providence, Sai of the King's Strength, 21 Speed, 21 Constitution, 20 Primordial Energy, 21 Primordial Energy Skill, Demonic Astral Wheel, 9 Dragon's Art, Dragon Gate Flying Immortal Skill, Ghost Steps, Transcendent Flying Immortal, Ashen Palm, etc. Companion Beast, Truth Listener, Banana Fairy, Mutated Stone Golem, Mutated Sword Fong Fish, Mutated Lotus Flower Ant, Silver Winged Sky, Spider Youngling, Ghost Bride, White Shadow of Poison, Mutated Overlord Snake, Dr. Darkness, Mutated Demonized General, Saber Shield Knight, etc. In terms of primordial energy skills, they mainly focused on speed and movement techniques. There wasn't much of a problem in this aspect. If one was fast enough, be it a fence or escape, they were better than the average person. Among the companion beasts, there were only a few that were often used. The mutated lotus flower ant clearly couldn't keep up with the rhythm of battle. The others were the same. However, the one that was truly decisive was the mythical banana fairy. Truth Listener hadn't hatched yet, so it was unknown what changes it would undergo in the future. Typical companion beasts have all sorts of problems. It's not that their stats aren't good, their life providence isn't good, or their primordial energy skills aren't good. In short, they have all sorts of flaws. Just like Overlord Spear, Ever Victorious is indeed a good skill, but Mutated Overlord Snake's level is too low. Its stats can only be considered average. Even with Ever Victorious, it's sometimes difficult to use it to its fullest potential. After some thought, Zhou Wen realized that he still had one life to take. It was to use his phone's pet fusion function to fuse the life providence, primordial energy skill, and stats he needed into a pet. First is the Ever Victorious skill. I have to think of a way to raise Overlord Snake's level or fuse this skill with other pets. Zhou Wen matched the mutated Overlord Snake with his other pets and looked at their compatibility. The mutated Overlord Snake's compatibility with other pets was relatively low. It didn't exceed 30% at most. Only the mutated Sword Fong Fish had a higher compatibility. It was just short of 50%. Without any better choices, it didn't seem to be of much use staying behind. Zhou Wen hesitated for a moment, but he couldn't bear to risk it. The probability of less than 50% was just too low. If he failed, Zhou Wen didn't wish to grind the mutated Overlord Snake again. It was too much of a waste of time. It made him want to vomit. The success rate of Dr. Darkness's fusion with other companion beasts was even lower. It basically didn't exceed a 10% compatibility. Ghost Bride was about the same. The mutated, demonized General and Saber Shield Knight's compatibility was also close to 50%. Zhou Wen gritted his teeth and chose to fuse them. Both weren't of much use now. If he couldn't improve further, there wasn't much use in keeping them. Boom! With an explosion, there was nothing on the phone. The mutated, demonized General and Saber Shield Knight vanished together. The words fusion failed popped up. Zhou Wen immediately felt depressed. He could still grind the mutated demonized general, but it wouldn't be that easy to obtain the Saber Shield Knight. Unwilling to fail just like that, Zhou infused the mutated Lotus Flower Ant with a mutated Buddha Heart Lotus, hoping to raise its stats a little. With the compatibility close to 70%, Zhou originally believed that it would definitely succeed, but to his surprise, it vanished with a bang once again. This can also fail? Zhou was extremely depressed, but he was also somewhat indignant. He decided to release the mutated Overlord Snake and mutated Sword Fang Fish to give it another shot. Chapter 330. I can't do it a third time, right? Heavens, please bless me with success. Zhou gritted his teeth and clicked on the fusion button. He saw the two companion beasts shimmer as they slowly fused together. Amidst Zhou's uneasy feelings, he heard a ding. The phone lit up as a new companion beast appeared on the phone screen. I succeeded. Zhou was overjoyed as he hurriedly looked at the new pet. He saw that the new pet was somewhat different from the Overlord Snake and Sword Fang Fish. The Overlord Snake was black, while the Sword Fang Fish was gold. As for the new pet, it was a dark gold color. It wasn't as gloomy as black, nor was it as bright as gold. It looked rather pleasing to the eye. Mutated Overlord Sword Snake. Epic. Zhou saw its name and saw that it looked a little like a sea snake. He didn't take a closer look and directly looked at its stats. Now, Zhou was most concerned if the ever-victorious skill was still around. Mutated Overlord Sword Snake. Epic Life Providence. Overlord of Swords Life Soul. Sword Flash Snake Strength. 40 Speed. 39 Constitution. 27 Primordial Energy. 36 Talent Skill. Ever Victorious. Fang Wheel Sword Flash Companion Form. Sword Zhou was overjoyed when he saw this. Although the Overlord Snake's Death Coil and Snaking Gulf's Elephant skills weren't inherited, the strongest ever-victorious skill was inherited. Fang Wheel Sword Flash was also a very powerful skill. With both of them, it was considered an excellent grade skill. The other stats were also very good. The Overlord of Swords Life Providence could enhance the might of sword techniques. It had a certain restraining effect on typical sword-type companion beasts. It was also a very good life providence. The Sword Flash Snake was basically the same as the Sword Fang Fish Life Soul. When it used Fang Wheel Sword Flash, the Life Soul would enhance the might of the Sword Flash and increase the number of Sword Flashes. If there was anything about the mutated Overlord Sword Snake that wasn't perfect, it was that its constitution was a little too low. It was only 27 points. Even before the fusion, the Sword Fang Fish had more than that. It was unknown why such a low constitution would drop. A poor constitution meant that the mutated Overlord Sword Snake was easily injured, and when it transformed into its sword form, it was easily damaged or severed. He summoned the Overlord Sword Snake in its sword form and looked at it. It was a dark gold greatsword. The edge of the sword gave off a cold glow, and there were snake-shaped black patterns on the back of the sword. If one took a careful look, they would discover that there were fish scale-like patterns on the sword's body. They looked like forging patterns that had been hammered thousands of times. The entire sword was extremely domineering and was 5 feet long. With Zhou's strength, he could barely lift it up. If he used it to attack, he probably wouldn't have the strength to swing it for long. He tested out the might of the Overlord sword in game. When he slashed out, the sword beam turned into a gear that shot forward. The ever-victorious offense skill actually buffed the sword beam, splitting a venomous sea lion in half. Such a powerful sword light. Zhou couldn't help but be overjoyed. The might of the Overlord sword was in no way inferior to Li Xian's Thunder God sword. It was even stronger. The ever-victorious skill was even more powerful than the lightning sword light. If the two were to be compared, the Thunder God sword's reputation as the #1 offensive pet would probably have to give way. The only flaw of the Overlord sword was its poor constitution. It was fine if it only slashed out a sword beam, but if the sword were to directly clash with the Thunder God sword, it would probably leave a mark. If it were to clash too many times, it might very well break. How can I raise the constitution of the Overlord sword? Otherwise, the name Overlord sword will ultimately be imperfect. With this in mind, Zhou quickly thought of an idea. If a companion beast fused with a companion egg, the companion beast would be the main one, and the companion egg would be supplementary. The Overlord Sword Snake's basic appearance and abilities wouldn't change much. It would only be strengthened. As long as he found a companion egg with a relatively strong constitution and high compatibility with the Overlord Sword Snake, it might be able to raise the Overlord Sword Snake's constitution stats. Of course, after the previous failure, Zhou definitely wouldn't take the risk with the Overlord Sword Snake without an 80% chance of success. It would be best if it had more than 90% compatibility before he planned on taking action. However, after a few matches, he realized that the other pets didn't have high compatibility with the Overlord Sword Snake. The highest was less than 50%. Even the Overlord Sword Snake only had a compatibility of 49%. Zhou planned on making a trip to a shop that sold companion eggs when he had the time. He could take a picture there and perhaps find a companion egg that had a higher compatibility with the Overlord Sword Snake. As for the remaining companion beasts, Zhou looked at them and couldn't bear to fuse them again. All he could do was give up and take the Overlord's sword to the underground sea. He wanted to see if the Overlord sword beam could approach the white cocoon. Once again, he entered the war wagon and looked at the white cocoon in the darkness. Zhou drew the Overlord sword and slashed at the white cocoon. Immediately, the Overlord sword's sword beam spun like a gear as it sliced at the white cocoon. Violent ripples appeared in the air as though calm water had been sliced open. The sword beam approached the white cocoon at a discernible speed. Zhou was overjoyed when he saw this. He watched as the sword beam tore through the invisible force outside the white cocoon and slashed at it, tearing a hole in it. However, before he could take another step, the black dragon that rushed and devoured the blood-colored avatar. The game went black. The sword beam, with ever victorious, is actually useful. Even Zhou was somewhat surprised. After all, he had been unable to touch the white cocoon when he used Overlord Snake. This gave Zhou hope again. Now that he could crack the white cocoon, the only thing he needed to consider was how to crack the white cocoon before the black dragons rushed in and obtain a drop of blood from the creature inside. Overlord Sword combined with Transcendent Flying Immortal was fast enough. Coupled with the speed of Ghost Steps, it could be said that it was difficult to find someone faster than Zhou at the same level. However, he still failed to complete his goal before the black dragon rushed in. Zhou had already done the math. He needed to slash out at least 3 times to create a hole in the white cocoon that allowed the blood-colored avatar to rush in. He tried a few times, but before he could slash out 3 times, he was swallowed by the black dragon that rushed in. From the looks of it, my Transcendent Flying Immortal isn't fast enough. Apart from the 3 strikes, I need at least 1 strike to injure the creature in the white cocoon before I can obtain the blood. My sword needs to be faster. Zhou planned on practicing the Transcendent Flying Immortal Primordial Energy skill and raising it to rank 10. At the thought of increasing his sword speed, Zhou thought of Feng Qiuyan. Therefore, he called Feng Qiuyan and asked if he was free. He wanted him to be his sparring partner. In terms of speed, Feng Qiuyan was definitely one of the fastest people at the same level. Coupled with his swift saber, heavenly king life, providence, and talent, Zhou couldn't think of anyone in school who could be faster than him. Chapter 331. I'm free. Where shall we meet? Feng Qiuyan agreed readily. Let's go to the training grounds, Zhou said. Mingxiu is here too. He wants to go with us. Can I bring him along? Feng Qiuyan asked. It's just practice. He can come if he wants. Zhou didn't mind. After all, Transcendent Flying Immortal wasn't a secret. 10 minutes, Feng Qiuyan said before hanging up. Mingxiu wanted to know how strong Zhou was. If Feng Qiuyan, who had been trained by him, was already so strong, then Zhou was definitely stronger. Just as the two of them left, they met Tianjinjin, who had come to deliver something to Mingxiu. When Tianjinjin heard that they were going to practice with Zhou, she requested to go with them. Since Zhou didn't mind being watched, Feng Qiuyan didn't reject him. The 3 of them headed for the training grounds. As Tianjinjin walked, she thought to herself, I don't believe that a first-year student is stronger than Mingxiu. I have to see with my own eyes if that Zhou Wen is a cheat. When the three of them arrived at the training grounds, Zhou Wen was already waiting inside. He was practicing the simplest sword drawing and striking techniques, not letting go of any possibility of increasing his sword speed. Is that Zhou Wen? He looks very ordinary. Although he looks pretty good and has a decent figure, why does his face look a little pale? He looks very weak. Is such a person really as powerful as Mingxiu said? When she saw Zhou Wen in person, Tian Jinjin's suspicions intensified. She couldn't be blamed. Zhou Wen usually used a lot of blood, and he had just been seriously injured. Furthermore, he had been grinding the underground sea in the temple recently. He had died too many times, and his body's ability to produce blood was almost unable to keep up with his expenditure. Zhou Wen had been doing some research recently. He wanted to see if there were any companion beasts that could strengthen his liver. It would be useful to get one to strengthen his liver function or a companion beast that could strengthen his bone marrow. Unfortunately, both were very rare. Zhou Wen hadn't discovered anything for the time being. "Coach, I'm here. What do you want me to practice with you?" The three of them entered the training grounds. Mingxiu and Tian Jinjin sat on the bench by the side as Feng Qiuyan walked over and asked, "I want to increase the speed of my sword strikes. You are an expert in this area. Give me some advice," Zhou Wen said to Feng Qiuyan. "Although I practice the saber, drawing a sword and a saber should be about the same. The speed of drawing the saber is different from the speed of the body. Generally speaking, the speed of drawing the saber will be faster than the speed of the body's movement. Firstly, the sword is lighter, and the saber's shape is easier to tear through resistance. The human body is much worse. It's heavy, and the area of resistance is relatively large. Therefore, there is less to consider when drawing the saber. In addition to strength, technique is also very important. The correct posture of holding the saber and the way to exert force can increase the speed of the saber. However, if you want to greatly increase your speed, you can only start with the technique of drawing the saber. It's just like using a gun. The firing speed of a gun is the same. The real crux is the instant you draw the gun. Whoever can draw the gun faster and pull the trigger faster will win. Drawing the saber is actually the same. Feng Qiuyan explained some key points to Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen tried some of the techniques and key points that Feng Qiuyan had taught him. It was really useful. His sword strikes were indeed much faster, but this speed still didn't meet his requirements. The black dragon that has escaped is too powerful. After I rush into the war wagon, I have limited time. This sword speed isn't enough, Zhou Wen thought to himself. Tian Jinjin and Mingxiu sat by the side and watched. After watching for a while, she curled her lips and said, "Mingxiu, why do you think this Zhou Wen is so powerful? He's even Feng Qiuyan's personal coach. Why is he getting Feng Qiuyan to teach him? Who's the coach? Don't tell me you got it wrong." "Maybe Zhou Wen has his reasons," Mingxiu said with uncertainty. Although it seemed like Zhou Wen was indeed seeking Feng Qiuyan's advice, Mingxiu had a deep impression of Zhou Wen's strength. Therefore, he didn't think like Tian Jinjin. He only believed that Zhou Wen had some plans. It's already very obvious. Zhou Wen is learning from Feng Qiuyan. What other deeper meaning can there be? Tian Jinjin increasingly felt that Mingxiu had been deceived and brainwashed by Zhou Wen. Let's wait and see. Zhou Wen doesn't like to play his cards according to common sense. Perhaps this is also a teaching method, Mingxiu said after some thought. Zhou Wen had already grasped the method that Feng Qiuyan had mentioned. All he needed was time to practice. However, even if he became proficient, the speed at which he improved wasn't fast enough. "Use your fast saber to attack me," Zhou Wen said to Feng Qiuyan after some thought. He wanted to observe Feng Qiuyan's saber techniques in actual combat and see if there was anything he could use as a reference to increase the speed of his strikes. Feng Qiuyan didn't waste his breath and took a wooden saber used for practice from the rack. However, he glanced at the practice sword in Zhou Wen's hand and said, "Coach, if you want to use a fast sword, such a large sword isn't suitable. You should change to a lighter sword." How could Zhou Wen not want change? However, only the Overlord sword could tear through the white cocoon. And the Overlord sword was a large sword. It was even heavier than the practice sword in his hand. He could only use a large sword to practice. If he used a thin sword, it would be useless even if he mastered it. If it wasn't because the Overlord sword was too heavy, Zhou wouldn't have needed to practice at all. Just the technique and speed of transcendent flying immortal was enough. I know. I just want to use a large sword to practice my fast sword, Zhou said. When Tian Jinjin heard that, she felt that Zhou didn't seem like a proper coach, who would use a great sword to practice their fast swordplay. Anyone who practiced swordplay knew that it wasn't suitable for ordinary sword techniques, much less fast swordplay. Even people who didn't practice swordplay should know that such a heavy weapon definitely couldn't take the path of a fast sword. However, Feng Shuyan only nodded as he drew his saber and slashed at Zhou. It was unknown how Feng Shuyan had been practicing recently, but Zhou realized that his saber techniques had become faster and stronger. Furthermore, he wasn't as impetuous as before. He vaguely had the aura of a saber expert. Zhou raised his sword to block Feng Shuyan's fast saber. He felt that Feng Shuyan's saber strikes were getting faster and faster, but they were abnormally stable. They were continuous like a galloping river. After Zhou blocked the first strike, he realized that he couldn't find a chance to retaliate. Under the continuous and seamless saber techniques, all he could do was constantly retreat to block. What a powerful saber technique. This fellow's improvement is just too fast. Zhou couldn't help but be surprised by Feng Shuyan's improvement speed. Every time he saw him, he seemed to have a completely different feeling. Feng Shuyan's saber technique is just too powerful. Although I can learn and master the same saber technique, when I use it, I don't have the same feeling as him. I keep feeling that something is missing, Ming Xiu pondered. Feng Shuyan is indeed very strong, but that Zhou has already been beaten to the point where he can't retaliate. How can he be as strong as you say? Tian Jinjin was almost certain that Ming Xiu had been fooled. Zhou wasn't as strong as the legends said. Chapter 332. Feng Shuyan's saber slashed faster and faster. His sharp posture made it seem as though Zhou's head would be lopped off if he blinked. Zhou had already switched his primordial energy art to the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra. The small perfection of Wisdom Sutra had the ability to strengthen his constitution, but it wasn't as simple as that. There were 6 types of prajna. The first was reality prajna. The second was realm prajna. The third was word prajna. The fourth was convenience prajna. The fifth was dependent prajna. And the sixth was the vajra prajna that most people were more familiar with. Wisdom was wisdom. The 6 types of wisdom were actually the wisdom to understand the universe. The small perfection of Wisdom Sutra enhanced one's physical abilities, making one's body sharp enough to understand the laws of the universe. When using the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra, Zhou's body and 6 senses would be strengthened. His perception of the outside world would also become very sharp. Zhou could sense the minute changes in Feng Shuyan's every strike. The seemingly simple saber technique contained techniques that outsiders couldn't understand. Zhou could even sense the flaws in Feng Shuyan's saber technique. The broadsword was too heavy and had great resistance. There was no way for him to be faster than Feng Shuyan. All Zhou could do was use the flaws in Feng Shuyan's saber technique to barely withstand his attacks. However, it had to be said that Feng Shuyan was indeed a martial arts genius. Whenever Zhou made use of a flaw, Feng Shuyan could immediately correct it, preventing Zhou from using it a second time. Fast, fast, fast. Feng Shuyan's saber was already so fast that people couldn't even see it clearly without blinking. Tian Jinjin watched from the side without blinking, but all she could see were saber shadows flashing. She couldn't see the trajectory of the saber at all. Ming Xiu could barely keep up with Feng Shuyan's saber speed and see his saber technique clearly. He thought to himself, "This fellow, Feng Shuyan, is just too powerful. If I fight him, I have to use all my strength and defeat him in the first few moves. The longer this drags on, the lower the chances of defeating him. After 100 strikes, he will probably be invincible among his peers. There's no one who can't withstand such a swift saber. It's no wonder his life providence is Swift Saber, Heavenly King. He indeed has the potential to be a king of sabers. By directly facing Feng Shuyan's saber techniques, Zhou also gained a lot. Feng Shuyan's drawing and sheathing of his saber were as standard as a textbook. It allowed Zhou to know how to be the fastest. If not for the heavy sword in his hand, he might have been able to keep up with Feng Shuyan's speed. Of course, Zhou didn't have the Swift Saber Heavenly King talent, so if he continued, Feng Shuyan would definitely be faster than him. It wasn't a lie to say that he was invincible after 100 saber strikes. Even Zhou wasn't willing to fight Feng Shuyan after 100 saber strikes. However, Zhou was learning now, so he naturally wouldn't stop Feng Shuyan from continuing his slashes. Only with such a swift saber could Zhou more accurately sense how Feng Shuyan dealt with drawing and sheathing his saber. Soon, Zhou realized that Feng Shuyan was indeed different from the average person. The average person would strike quickly but sheath their saber much slower. However, Feng Shuyan sheathed his saber faster than he drew it. This resulted in him delivering 3 strikes, while others might not even be able to deliver 2 strikes. This technique was naturally learned by Zhou. At the same time, he realized that every time Feng Shuyan struck out, he would have a habit of flicking his wrist. Although this action had the benefit of increasing his saber speed, it also made his saber travel a distance. This distance was already considered a flaw for Zhou. Using this flaw, Zhou lowered his sword hilt and struck Feng Shuyan's wrist. Indeed, Feng Shuyan found it difficult to withstand. His attack immediately slowed as he dodged Zhou's strike. However, Feng Shuyan's attack didn't stop at all. The saber didn't stop as it slashed over again. As for his flicking wrist, it had already vanished. At that moment, Feng Shuyan's saber technique was already unbelievably fast. Even though it was only a rubber saber used for practice, it still produced a cold glint as though it wanted to slice Zhou into pieces. Even Ming Xiao and Tian Jinjin, who were sitting by the side, felt their hearts turn cold as though the saber beam could slash at their necks at any moment. This Feng Shuyan is really impressive. He's probably not much inferior to Ming Xiao. Although Tian Jinjin had always felt that Ming Xiao was invincible among his peers, she had no choice but to rank him on par with Ming Xiao after seeing Feng Shuyan's powerful saber. She didn't dare underestimate him at all. However, when she looked at Zhou, who had been suppressed by Feng Shuyan's saber technique, she was even more certain that Ming Xiao had been fooled. Although this Zhou isn't weak and can withstand Feng Shuyan's swift saber for so long, with such strength, it's impossible for him to be Feng Shuyan's personal coach. I have to talk to Ming Xiao later, Tian Jinjin thought to herself. Ming Xiao had seen Feng Shuyan's swift saber many times. He had been sparring with Feng Shuyan every day since he came to school. He was extremely familiar with his swift saber, but today, Feng Shuyan seemed especially strong. Ming Xiao felt that if Feng Shuyan's current opponent was him, he would have long decided the victor between them. It was impossible for him to continue slashing like this. Otherwise, Ming Xiao, would definitely lose. However, Zhou clearly had no intention of deciding the victor. He continued allowing Feng Shuyan's swift saber to become faster. What does coach want to do? Ming Xiao was puzzled as he frowned in thought. In the blink of an eye, 100 strikes had passed. Zhou had simplified his drawing and sheathing motions to the extreme, but he still felt that he couldn't keep up with Feng Shuyan's swift saber. The saber was so fast that it was almost impossible to see its shadow. Even Feng Shuyan himself was beginning to lose control of his speed. The veins on his fingers bulged as the hand holding the saber trembled. It was as though the saber might lose control at any moment. Feng Shuyan, be careful. I'm about to strike. Zhou was suppressed to the point that he couldn't resist. He suddenly roared as he dragged the sword in his hand and slashed out from bottom to top. He used Transcendent Flying Immortal. At that moment, Transcendent Flying Immortal had already been simplified by Zhou. Although it wasn't as fast as Feng Chuyin's sheathing of his saber, it was still consistent. All sorts of minute movements have been simplified by Zhou Wen to the extreme. There weren't any unnecessary movements. It was the same transcendent flying immortal, but when Zhou Wen used it, it was even more domineering and direct. It was less elegant, but it was even more domineering. Tian Jinjin originally imagined that Zhou Wen would be slashed by the unbelievably fast saber, but to her surprise, Zhou Wen's aura changed. In an instant, it was as though a sky fiend had descended. He fused with his sword and was as fast as lightning. Sword shadows crisscrossed with Feng Chuyin as the center. The sounds of the saber and sword colliding formed a line. It was impossible to tell how many times their saber and sword had clashed. Even Feng Chuyin's fast saber couldn't keep up with the domineering sword stance. After the sword shadows that filled the sky dissipated, Zhou Wen and Feng Chuyin stood facing each other. The saber in Feng Chuyin's hand hung to the ground as Zhou Wen's sword was held to his neck. That person is too terrifying. Tian Jinjin was alarmed. She felt that Zhou Wen's strike was the most domineering and gorgeous sword technique she had ever seen in her life. Chapter 333. Zhou Wen was rather delighted when he sensed the improvement of transcendent flying immortal. He was just about to thank Feng Chuyin for being his sparring partner. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to improve so much in such a short period of time. However, before Zhou Wen could say a word, Feng Chuyin said, "Coach, thank you for your guidance." "I understand." "What do you understand?" Zhou Wen was somewhat dumbfounded, unsure what Feng Chuyin meant. Feng Chuyin said seriously, "Coach, you specially pointed out the flaws in my saber technique. You really put in a lot of effort. Chuyin will definitely live up to your expectations. I will definitely achieve something. Coach, don't worry. Who the hell would have any expectations of you?" Zhou Wen looked at Feng Chuyin with a complicated expression. Looking at his sincere and serious expression, he couldn't bring himself to thank him. All he could do was say helplessly, "Practice well. I'll be leaving now." "Coach, don't worry. I'll definitely work hard." Feng Chuyin shouted at Zhou Wen's back. Zhou Wen didn't turn around and only waved his hand. He really didn't know what to say. He clearly hadn't taught him anything, but Feng Chuyin was able to improve rapidly every time. This puzzled Zhou Wen. Coach's sword technique is really too powerful. Ming Xiu walked over and said with a burning gaze. He was studying the sword technique his father had passed down. He wanted to improve the sword technique so that it could truly enter the forest of superior sword techniques. Originally, he didn't have any clues, but after seeing Zhou Wen's transcendent flying immortal, Ming Xiu had some ideas. Tian Jinjin also said, "Zhou Wen's sword technique is indeed not bad, but he only won against Feng Chuyin with one strike." Tian Jinjin already believed that Zhou Wen was very strong. That strike was indeed domineering and left a deep impression on her. However, from the beginning to the end, Zhou Wen had been suppressed by Feng Chuyin. In the end, he only won by one strike. From her point of view, the two of them could be considered evenly matched. Zhou Wen had only won by a narrow margin. However, Feng Chuyin shook his head and said, "That's just what you see on the surface. In fact, Coach isn't asking me to teach him swift swordplay, but to point out the flaws in my saber technique." "Is that so?" Tian Jinjin doubted Feng Chuyin's words. Feng Chuyin said, "Didn't you realize that Coach rarely counterattacked from the beginning? Wasn't it because I was suppressed by your swift saber?" Tian Jinjin said. Feng Chuyin said in all seriousness, "Of course not. The reason why Coach didn't counterattack was because he wanted me to showcase my saber arts to my heart's content. Only then could he find the flaws in my saber arts. He did not counterattack many times, but every time he counterattacked, he hit the flaws in my saber technique. He let me know where my weaknesses were and was able to correct them in time." "Is that so?" Tian Jinjin widened her eyes in disbelief, but she had no choice but to believe it when it came from Feng Chuyin himself. Ming Xiu, who was at the side, also said, That's true. Every time Coach attacked, he hit the flaws in the opponent's sword technique. To be able to see through the flaws in the opponent's sword technique during such a quick battle, Coach's martial arts cultivation is indeed far superior to ours. With Ming Xiu saying so, Tianjinjin had no choice but to believe it. However, Ming Xiu didn't know that Zhou Wen's ability wasn't purely a result of his martial arts cultivation, but an ability that came with the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Feng Qiuyan nodded in agreement. Indeed, Coach really put in a lot of effort. He knew that there were flaws in my saber art, so he specially came to guide me. After I corrected the flaws in my saber art, he defeated me with one strike. If he had attacked seriously from the beginning, I wouldn't have been able to withstand that strike. How could I have exchanged more than 100 strikes with Coach? Feng Qiuyan didn't know that Zhou Wen's transcendent flying immortal wasn't that strong in the beginning. It was only after seeing his 100 strikes that he learned its advantages that it evolved to such a terrifying level. That's actually the case? Tianjinjin was alarmed. Now that she thought about it carefully, it did seem to be the case. If Zhou Wen had directly used that domineering strike, wouldn't Feng Qiuyan have been defeated in one strike? With this in mind, Tianjinjin couldn't help but sigh. Sunset College is indeed worthy of being the top college in this area. A student can actually be this strong. I was too inexperienced in the past. That's very normal. You haven't been here for long. In the future, you will know Coach's true strength. In the past, Coach was gaming on his phone while sparring with me. He didn't even look at me. I wasn't his match either, and I was completely defeated. The battle Feng Qiuyan mentioned was actually the time at the throwing machine. It wasn't a real battle. However, when these words landed in Tianjinjin and Ming Xiu's ears, they were extremely shocked. A powerful expert like Feng Qiuyan, a monster who could fight Ming Xiu to a draw, was actually defeated by Zhou Wen with one hand. Furthermore, he was gaming on his phone. This was unbelievable. Coach, is he really that strong? Tianjinjin's form of address changed. She didn't directly call Zhou Wen by his name. I shouldn't say that he's strong. He's in a completely different realm from us. All right, it's time for me to practice. After Coach's guidance, not only did he correct the flaws in my saber technique, but he also gave me some insights. His final strike was to tell me that no one will foolishly wait for me to deliver 100 strikes. If I can't resolve this problem, my saber techniques will ultimately be considered mediocre. Now, I'm going to practice my saber techniques to resolve this problem. With that said, Feng Qiuyan turned around and left. I'm also going to practice my sword play. Coach's strike inspired me greatly. I think I know where to research my sword techniques. Ming Xiu also left in a hurry. Tianjinjin followed, behind Ming Xiu, with a complicated expression. She looked back in the direction Zhou Wen had left in. I thought Ming Xiu was already an invincible existence among his peers. I never expected there to be such a powerful peer in this world. It's just too terrifying. Zhou Wen naturally didn't know what they were thinking. Now that his transcendent flying immortal had improved significantly, he only needed to practice it for a period of time. He only needed to reach the pinnacle of striking and sheathing his saber to reach rank 10. Zhou Wen didn't do anything for the past few days. All he did was grind in-game and practice transcendent flying immortal. He wanted to reach the pinnacle of transcendent flying immortal and slice open the white cocoon in the most perfect manner. He wanted to obtain a drop of the terrifying creature's blood and see if he could advance to the epic stage. Chapter 334. Zhou Wen, something happened. Come to Old Dragon Cave quickly. Early in the morning, Zhou Wen was still sleeping when he was woken up by his phone's ringtone. After picking it up, he heard Zhong Ziya's anxious voice. Zhong Ziya was usually a carefree person who didn't take anything to heart. Zhou Wen had never heard him speak in such a flustered tone before. He immediately had an ominous feeling. What happened? Zhou Wen hurriedly asked. The people from the League's Special Inspection Bureau have sealed the laboratory. They say that teacher is an overseas spy and have arrested him. Now, the school is negotiating with the League's Special Inspection Bureau. Zhong Ziya hurriedly recounted the matter. What? Zhou was stunned when he heard that. He couldn't connect Wang Mingyuan to any overseas spy. Wait for me. I'll be right there. Zhou didn't believe that Wang Mingyuan was a spy. Furthermore, with his understanding of the Special Inspection Bureau, those fellows were unreasonable in their actions. They were best at imposing groundless charges on others. He himself was a living example. By the time Zhou arrived at the scene, he realized that the entire Dragon Gate Grotto area had been sealed off. There were probably no less than 1,000 inspectors in the Bureau's uniform. Many of them had flowers on their shoulders and were rather high-ranking. Liz, whom Zhou had previously met, was also there. However, from the looks of it, she was only qualified to guard the entrance. There were also some Luoyang troops, school leaders, and students outside. The scene looked very chaotic. Zhong Zia, Hui Haifeng, and Jiang Yin were all outside with solemn expressions. What's the situation now? Is teacher all right? Zhou hurriedly went forward and asked. The Bureau must have made a mistake. How can teacher be a spy? Zhong Zia said. Hui Haifeng comforted him. It should be fine. This is Luoyang, and tutor is from Luoyang's Wang family. If there's no concrete evidence, even the Director General of the League's Special Inspection Bureau wouldn't be able to take tutor away so easily. Tutor Wang, the school's leaders, and Deputy Commander Qin are all inside. It won't be that easy for the Bureau to frame tutor. Zhou felt much better when he heard Hui Haifeng's words, but on second thought, he felt that something was amiss. The Bureau's Director General is here? Zhou asked Hui Haifeng. Hui Haifeng nodded slightly. It was obvious that he was also very worried about this. If it was just an ordinary inspector, even if it was a division minister, it would be easy to resolve the matter. It was almost impossible to take him away from Sunset College. However, with the Bureau's director coming personally, it wasn't an easy matter to resolve. There was only one possibility for the director to come personally. The 6 hero families had already reached a consensus. This was very disadvantageous for Wang Mingyuan. The 4 of them no longer had the desire to speak. They stared eagerly at Dragon Gate Grotto, hoping to see something or hear some good news. Not long after, they saw a group of people walking over from the stone steps. Among them were many school leaders, Wang Fei, and Deputy Governor Qin. However, their expressions were very ugly. However, when they saw Wang Mingyuan, their bodies trembled. Wang Mingyuan was being held by 2 inspectors at gunpoint, and his hands were already handcuffed. Zhou and company knew very well what this meant. Even Deputy Governor Qin had failed to prevent Wang Mingyuan from being arrested. The situation was already extremely bad. Teacher, Zhong Zia called out and wanted to rush forward, but he was stopped by the inspectors on both sides. Zhong Zia wanted to barge in. He had a fearless personality. If anyone dared to touch Wang Mingyuan, he would stab them even if they were the Emperor of Heaven. Zia, stop. Wang Fei came over to stop Zhong Zia. Zhong Zia knew Wang Fei's relationship with Wang Mingyuan, so he didn't forcefully charge forward after being stopped by her. He only continued glaring at the inspectors. They're Wang Mingyuan students, right? Bring them back for interrogation. A tall and sturdy old man, wearing a military uniform and a coat, said, as he looked at Zhong Zia and the other 3. Yes, Director General. The inspectors beside him immediately responded and wanted to arrest them. Director General, they're only ordinary students. They only have an ordinary teacher-student relationship with Wang Mingyuan. We will conduct a strict investigation regarding them. There's no need to trouble your bureau. Governor Qin extended his hand and gestured. The troops beside him immediately protected Zhou, Wan, and company, forming a standoff with the inspectors. Governor Qin, the evidence is conclusive that Wang Mingyuan is an overseas spy. Can you guarantee that his students weren't brainwashed by him and turned into his subordinates? The elder said as he stared coldly at Qin Wufu. No, so I'll take them back to investigate. Our Sunset Army won't let a bad person off, but we won't malign a good person either, Qin Wufu said. Seeing that Qin Wufu wasn't backing down, the elder frowned slightly. Xiao Suan walked over and whispered something into the elder's ear before glancing at Zhou. The elder's gaze landed on Zhou, and he said indifferently, so it's someone from the Yin family. It's no wonder Governor Qin is deliberately protecting him. Forget it. I'll give Ian family some face. However, if we really find out that he's involved in this case, I'm afraid the Ian family won't even be able to get rid of him. With that said, he ignored Qin Wufu's reaction and walked out with the inspectors. Wang Mingyuan looked very calm as he was escorted out. He only nodded slightly at Zhou Wan and company with a smile on his face, but he didn't say a word. Ms. Wang Fei, did they malign teacher? Think of a way. We can't let them take teacher away. If a person enters a place like the bureau, even if they are innocent, they will be crippled. Teacher can't go there, Zhong Zia said as he pulled Wang Fei. He knew that with his strength, it was impossible for him to save Wang Mingyuan in front of the bureau's director general, even if he risked his life. We'll talk when we get back, Wang Fei said with a heavy expression as she held Zhong Zia down. Everyone watched helplessly as Wang Mingyuan was escorted away, but there was nothing they could do. Ms. Wang Fei, what's the situation now? Zhou asked. Wang Fei sighed softly. Although I don't believe that Uncle Mingyuan is such a person, there's conclusive evidence. The four of them were stunned when they heard that. Zhong Zia shouted, Impossible! How can teacher be that kind of person? The bureau must have maligned teacher. They're a bunch of mad dogs that bite anyone they see. Wang Fei shook her head slightly and said with a bitter smile, Those documents have Uncle Mingyuan's personal signature. Many of the things were personally collected and organized by Uncle Mingyuan. Those things can't be faked. Zhou Wan and company were stunned, momentarily at a loss for words. Chapter 335. I don't care if teacher is an overseas spy. We can't let them take him away just like that. Going to a place like the Special Investigation Bureau is a dead end. Ms. Wang Fei, think of a way to snatch him back before they leave Luoyang. Destroy the evidence. If that doesn't work, we can just let teacher escape to a dimensional zone, Zhong Zia said. Wang Fei shook her head and said, Don't spout nonsense. We can't do that. We can't be a savage in a dimensional zone for the rest of our lives, right? Furthermore, the Bureau's director has brought a mythical companion beast with him, who can snatch him away from him. Zhong Zia immediately felt discouraged when he heard that. He frowned and said, Is there no other way? Wang Fei fell silent. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no other way, the Wang family and Luoyang's military wouldn't have allowed the Bureau to take him away from the school. Jiang Yin suddenly said. Perhaps Tutor had already expected this. Since he didn't escape, it means that he doesn't want to escape. What do you mean? Zhong Zia glared at Jiang Yin and asked. Jiang Yin pondered for a moment before continuing. Think about it. Do the four of us usually have someone in the laboratory? And this time, it's such a coincidence that all four of us left the laboratory. None of us were there. It's just a coincidence, right? If teacher really expected it, why didn't he destroy the evidence ahead of time? As long as there's no evidence, the Bureau shouldn't be able to take him away unless he's caught red-handed on the spot, right? Zhong Zia said. Jiang Yin shook his head slightly. Even if Zhou Wan didn't go, Hui Haifeng often goes out. The two of them don't count. The two of us are in the laboratory every day. It's rare for us to go out at the same time. Even if there's something, one of us will usually be left in the laboratory. I left because teacher wanted me to hunt the golden warriors in the Myriad Buddha Cave. Why weren't you in the laboratory? Teacher asked me to help him buy things outside the school. Zhong Zia also felt that there was something amiss about this matter. It was as though Wang Mingyuan had deliberately sent them away. Hui Haifeng also said I was supposed to go to the laboratory today, but Tutor told me about a new fist technique yesterday. It caused me to practice late into the night, so I didn't go to the laboratory today. The four of them increasingly felt that Wang Mingyuan seemed to have predicted that something would happen today, which was why he sent them away. Let's talk after we return to the barracks. Before the people from the Bureau leave, the four of you shouldn't return to your dorms. Besides, there are indeed some questions that need your answers. Qin Wufu got the soldiers to take the four of them back. Firstly, it was to protect them. Secondly, there was a need to investigate this matter thoroughly. If Wang Mingyuan was really an overseas spy, the four of them had to be eliminated as suspects. Otherwise, if anything happened, it would be a hidden danger to Luoyang's safety. Zhou had no idea what was going on as an overseas spy. When he was interrogated alone, he only told the truth about his interactions with Wang Mingyuan. After that, the four of them were detained in the barracks. They were not let out, but it was not bad to meet them. Each of them was given a single room. Ms. Wang Fei, what's going on with the overseas spies? Zhou asked in puzzlement when Wang Fei came to visit him. Wang Fei sighed and said, "The overseas factions are human factions established by some devils who fled overseas in the early days of the League establishment. Before the 6 heroes appeared, they did whatever they wanted and committed countless murders. Every one of them is a ferocious devil. Their hands are stained with the blood of innocent humans. The most famous one, Jing Daoxian, is one of them. However, for some reason, Jing Daoxian stays in the League all year round and rarely returns overseas." "You mean to say that teacher is one of those demons?" Zhou really couldn't believe it. It was impossible for such a gentle Wang Mingyuan to be a ferocious devil. "Although I don't believe it either, the evidence is just too sufficient. Furthermore, he was caught red-handed. Even Uncle Mingyuan didn't defend himself and tacitly agreed to it." Wang Fei didn't believe it either, but she had no choice but to believe the truth. Although that was what he said, Zhou still couldn't believe that Wang Mingyuan was a devil. The military camp had its own rules. Zhou's phone and items were temporarily detained by the military. Without a phone to play with, Zhou could only wait in the single room. Not long after, Qin Wufu got someone to release the four of them the next day. He also told Zhou that the Bureau had already escorted Wang Mingyuan back to Holy City yesterday. Zhou took back his phone and items. They were all untouched, so he felt slightly relieved. The four of them returned to Old Dragon Cave's laboratory and realized that it was in a mess. Not only had all the furniture and equipment been destroyed, but even the stone walls had many holes. The four of them looked at each other without saying a word. They couldn't accept the fact that Wang Mingyuan was an overseas spy. "Jiang Yin, you have the best ideas. Tell me, is there any way to save teacher?" Zhong Zia asked Jiang Yin through gritted teeth. Jiang Yin shook his head slightly. "Unless we can advance to the mythical stage, no one can save teacher in this situation. Then how will they deal with teacher?" Zhong Zia asked again. Jiang Yin thought for a moment and said, "If teacher is really an overseas spy, for even the Bureau's Director General to be mobilized, teacher's status is definitely not low. Or perhaps he's implicated in some secret that even the Senate is interested in. That's why they forcefully captured him. If that's the case, perhaps they won't kill teacher in the short term, or if teacher is willing to provide them with what they want, he might still have a chance of survival. Other than that, there's nothing we can do." Although Zhou knew that it was useless, he still called in Sheng and asked him for his opinion on Wang Mingyuan's matter. Although he said that he wanted to know in Sheng's opinion, he actually wanted to ask if Sheng had any way to save Wang Mingyuan. If it was for himself, Zhou definitely wouldn't have asked Sheng such a question. However, Wang Mingyuan's position in his heart was different. Unfortunately, Sheng told Zhou with great certainty that he had been caught red-handed on the spot. There was no room for negotiation unless Wang Mingyuan could produce something that satisfied the League. Perhaps he might have a chance of saving his life. Zhou originally imagined that this matter would be over, but to his surprise, Zhou, Hui Haifeng, and company received a notice from the League a few days later that Wang Mingyuan wanted to meet them. However, Wang Mingyuan didn't force them. He said that they could go if they wanted to, and they didn't have to go if they didn't want to. After that, the four of them even had a video call with Wang Mingyuan. Wang Mingyuan only said that he wanted to meet them and say something to them in person. He didn't say anything else. Zhou could sense that Wang Mingyuan seemed to have something that wasn't convenient to say. Chapter 336. Although they knew that it might be very dangerous to head to Holy City like this, the four of them ultimately chose to head there. Zhou didn't know why Hui Haifeng and company had chosen to go, but although he hadn't been with Wang Mingyuan for long, Wang Mingyuan had indeed helped him greatly. He had even saved his life. This meeting might very well be the last time he would see Wang Mingyuan, so Zhou wanted to take a look no matter what. Wang Fei and Qin Wufu had tried to persuade them, but no one was willing to give up the chance to see Wang Mingyuan one last time. They resolutely boarded the plane sent by the Federation to pick them up. Qin Wufu sent his personal guards to follow Zhou Wen, but Zhou Wen rejected them. This was because even if he brought 2 top epic experts, it would be useless in the Bureau's territory. The Federation inspectors were very polite to them. They didn't look as arrogant as they usually did. They tried their best to satisfy their needs along the way. After arriving in Holy City, they politely invited them to stay in a guest house under the Bureau. They originally imagined that the Bureau would fall out with them when they reached the Bureau's territory, but that didn't happen. The Bureau still provided them with good food and drinks, as though they were afraid of neglecting them. "When can we see, teacher?" Zhong Zia asked an inspector impatiently. "That depends on the arrangements of the higher-ups. I'm just an ordinary inspector. I only follow the orders of the higher-ups," the inspector said with a smile. They originally imagined that they would be able to meet Wang Mingyuan soon, but it was only on the 3rd day that an inspector told them to prepare to meet Wang Mingyuan. Zhou Wen and company passed through layers of checkpoints and entered a secret base in Holy City. They met Wang Mingyuan in a heavily guarded room. Wang Mingyuan's condition looked pretty good. He hadn't suffered any inhumane abuse as they had imagined. There didn't seem to be any injuries on his body, and he still had a gentle smile on his face. However, Zhou Wen had a nagging feeling that Wang Mingyuan was still somewhat different. He felt somewhat familiar, but he couldn't put his finger on it. It was a very subtle feeling. "All of you are here," Wang Mingyuan said with a smile as he looked at the 4 of them. "Teacher, are you all right?" Zhong Zia asked worriedly. Wang Mingyuan shook his head slightly and asked with a smile, "Do you remember the question I asked you before?" The 4 of them were slightly taken aback. Zhou Wen immediately recalled the question Wang Mingyuan had asked him about pain and death. He asked in puzzlement, "Is it about the choice between death and pain?" Wang Mingyuan nodded and said, "Yes, I asked you before, and you all gave your answers. Later, you all asked me what I would choose. At that time, I hadn't decided what to choose, but now I have an answer." The 4 of them looked at Wang Mingyuan in confusion. They didn't know why he was still concerned about that issue at this time. However, they all knew Wang Mingyuan's character. They knew that he wasn't someone who would speak without thinking. Perhaps there was a deeper meaning to him mentioning that question now. Zhou Wen was also secretly wondering if Wang Mingyuan was hinting at something. However, when Zhou Wen thought about everything Wang Mingyuan had said back then and compared it to everything he had said now, he really couldn't think of any deeper meaning. In another room, separated by a wall, the Bureau's Director General, Shun Yuqi, Qiao Siyuan, and the other key personnel of the Bureau were watching the conversation between Wang Mingyuan and Zhou Wen through the one-way glass. Director General, Wang Mingyuan is a member of Luoyang's Wang family. The Wang family has so many relatives, including his blood brothers, but he insists on meeting his 4 students. "I think there's something amiss about this matter," Qiao Siyuan said. "This is the headquarters of our Bureau. Are you afraid that he can fly into the sky? Who cares who he wants to meet? As long as Wang Mingyuan can help us after he meets them, it's fine," a director of the Bureau said. Qiao Siyuan frowned slightly. What he hated the most were these people who spent their days in the office. Not only did they not do anything, but they also caused trouble for them all day. "Let them finish speaking. When we send them out later, separate the 4 of them and ask them what Wang Mingyuan asked them," Shin Yuqi said. "Yes, Director General," Qiao Siyuan replied. In the room next door, Wang Mingyuan's gaze swept across the faces of Zhou Wen and company. Then, he said to them with a smile, "My answer is that I'll choose the second path like Jiang Yan." With that said, without waiting for the 4 of them to react, Wang Mingyuan stood up and said to the mirror wall, "All right, I've said what I wanted to say. Now, you can do what you want to do. However, I have a condition. I need the 4 of them to go with me." Zhou Wen and company wore looks of shock. Clearly, Wang Mingyuan's words weren't directed at them. They didn't know what was going on, nor did they know what Wang Mingyuan was up to. "Director General, Wang Mingyuan can't be trusted. He must have a motive for bringing Zhou Wen and company along. You can't agree to it, Xiao Siyuan said. It's just 4 students. Even if he brings them along, what can he do? The director was Xiao Siyuan's enemy and always disagreed with him. Shen Yuqi frowned slightly and pondered for a moment before saying into the microphone, Wang Mingyuan, you have too many requests. As the only person who can open the Holy Tower, I don't think I have many requests, right? Wang Mingyuan said with a smile, as though he was certain that Shen Yuqi would agree to his request. Shen Yuqi's gaze passed through the glass and met Wang Mingyuan's eyes. After a while, he said coldly, This is your last request. If I hear you have any more requests, I'll kill one of your students. Deal. Wang Mingyuan nodded slightly. Zhou frowned slightly, unsure what Wang Mingyuan meant. However, Jiang Yin muttered to himself, Wasn't the Holy Tower closed long ago? Can Tutor open the closed Holy Tower? When Zhou heard Jiang Yin's words, he was about to ask something when an inspector came over and took Wang Mingyuan and company out. Soon, they were escorted to a car. The car seemed to have a special design. They couldn't hear or sense anything outside. They couldn't even sense if the car was moving. Teacher, what's going on? Although there were inspectors monitoring them, Zhong Zia couldn't help but ask Wang Mingyuan. I've already told you the answer. Now, I just want you to accompany me on my final journey, Wang Mingyuan said calmly, but his eyes were somewhat complicated. Jiang Yin said, According to what I know, the Holy Tower should be the defensive hub of the entire Holy City. It's also the hub between the Holy City and the Holy Land. Originally, the 6 hero families could use the connection between the Holy Tower and the 6 temples in the Holy Land to form a defense net. The strength of the defense net could even block the attacks of mythical creatures. However, Jing Daoxian used some unknown method to shut down the Holy Tower, causing the Holy City's defense net to vanish. Only then could he charge into the League building and unleash a massacre. Although the League has been researching it, no one has been able to reopen the Holy Tower to this day. Chapter 337. Teacher, can you activate the Holy Tower? Jiang Yin asked Wang Mingyuan. Wang Mingyuan nodded slightly, but didn't say a word. Instantly, the car fell silent again. The sanctum was no ordinary tower. It was a statue of a god that was more than 100 meters tall. Its entire body was as white as jade, and it looked like a person with his arms outstretched towards the sky, praying to the heavens. Legend had it that before Jing Daoxian charged into the League building to massacre, the statue emitted infinite holy light. The holy light could envelop the entire holy city, and no matter how many powerful dimensional creatures there were, they were unable to rush into the holy light. But now, although the statue was still white, it didn't have any holy light. It was just a majestic statue. In front of the statue, there were many soldiers, officers, and inspectors. Among them, there were 6 people who stood out the most. They were 4 men and 2 women. If anyone knew them, they would definitely be shocked by their simultaneous appearance. These 4 men and 2 women were the current leaders of the 6 families. They were members of the Senate, and when the 6 of them stood together, their power was even greater than the League presidents. After all, the League president's proposal had to be passed by the Senate before it could be implemented. Sir, Wang Mingyuan has been brought here. Even someone as domineering as Shen Yuqi had to be respectful in front of the 6. He didn't dare show any signs of impropriety. Are you ready? Among the 6, a woman who looked like a noble goddess asked indifferently. Everything is ready. Wang Mingyuan has already agreed to activate the Holy Tower, Shen Yuqi said. Very good. We've been waiting for this day for far too long. If Wang Mingyuan can really reactivate the sanctum, then he'll be the greatest hero of our federation. It's just a pity. Another elegant middle-aged man said faintly, but he didn't finish his sentence. According to the information we obtained from him, the feasibility is indeed very high. However, there are 1 or 2 key points that our researchers haven't figured out. We need Wang Mingyuan to do it personally. A person who looked like a secretary said. Then let him go, the woman said indifferently. Yes, Shin Yuchi replied, and got someone to bring Wang Mingyuan over. When Wang Mingyuan passed by the six of them, the elegant man looked down at him and said, Wang Mingyuan, after the sacred tower is reopened, we will pardon all your sins and give you a chance to start over. Make good use of this opportunity and don't waste the kindness of the lords. I will seize the opportunity. Wang Mingyuan wore shackles that were formed from a special companion beast. Even a mythical creature would find it difficult to escape if they were shackled. Under the escort of the inspectors, Zhou Wen and company followed Wang Mingyuan to the statue. Are those four youths Wang Mingyuan's students? The elegant middle-aged man asked as he looked at the quartet beside Wang Mingyuan. Yes, one of them is related to the Yin family, Shin Yuchi said. During special times, the Yin family isn't an exception. To be able to sacrifice for the Federation, their deaths can be considered valuable. I believe the Yin family can understand. The elegant middle-aged man's casual words seemed to decide Zhou Wen and company's fate. In front of the sacred tower, the shackled Wang Mingyuan stopped. He was standing in front of a stone tripod in front of the statue. Everyone's eyes were attracted to him. Even the six people who stood at the top of the Federation's power pyramid couldn't help but stare at Wang Mingyuan, hoping that he would do something. Wang Mingyuan turned to look at the Federation official beside him and said, The sacrificial ritual can begin. Follow the procedure. If anything goes wrong, don't blame me. If anything goes wrong, the first to die will be you. The official snorted coldly before looking at Shin Yuchi. Seeing Shin Yuchi nod slightly, the official gave the order. A row of soldiers walked up and lined up in front of the stone tripod. Then they cut their fingers and dripped a drop of blood into the stone tripod. As more and more blood dripped into the stone tripod began to burn. It was as though the blood was gasoline. The more blood dripped in, the more intense the flames in the stone tripod became. The four men and two women revealed looks of delight. If the holy tower could really be reactivated, the safety of the holy city would greatly increase. Even if all the dimensional zones lost their ability to end things in the future, the Holy Land would still be a paradise for humans. No dimensional creatures could rush in. However, as more and more soldiers donated their blood, the flames in the stone tripod grew higher and higher. However, there were no other changes. The statue didn't emit any holy light. Seeing that the last soldier had finished donating his blood and retreated from the altar, the official frowned and asked, Wang Mingyuan, what should we do next? Next, we need to pray sincerely, Wang Mingyuan said. The official was slightly taken aback as he asked in puzzlement, Is prayer useful? If prayer was useful, there wouldn't be so many poor people in the world, Wang Mingyuan said with a smile. Are you kidding me? The official was immediately enraged as he pointed at Wang Mingyuan and said, It's best if you can activate the holy tower. Otherwise, I'll make you retreat and never be born in this world. Wang Mingyuan suddenly moved and slammed into the official. The official's strength was very ordinary, and he was someone who often sat in an office. His combat ability was almost zero. Caught off guard by Wang Mingyuan's slam, he involuntarily retreated and slammed into the stone tripod. Immediately, he fell into the burning stone tripod. The official's body immediately ignited as though he was on fire. He screamed and tried to crawl out, but it was as though a pair of hands were pulling him from the stone tripod, preventing him from crawling out no matter how hard he tried. Wang Mingyuan, what are you doing? Shin Yuchi was enraged. All the soldiers and inspectors aimed their guns at Wang Mingyuan. As long as he gave the order, Wang Mingyuan would immediately be riddled with holes. However, Wang Mingyuan ignored him and turned to look at the statue. Shin Yuchi frowned and shouted a few more questions, but Wang Mingyuan ignored him. All he did was stand there and look up at the statue. Wait, look at the statue. The noble woman stopped Shin Yuchi, who was about to personally deal with Wang Mingyuan, and pointed at the statue. They saw a lustrous glow appear on the statue's hands. Although it wasn't very bright, it left them ecstatic. This was something they had never seen in all their years of studying the Holy Tower. The official's screams and the flames gradually weakened, but the glow on the statue grew stronger. It wasn't just the hands. The entire statue emitted a holy glow, as though it was a true manifestation of a god. Wang Mingyuan looked at the rising holy light with a strange expression on his face as he muttered to himself, "Of course, there must be sacrifices for a sacrifice." The four of them were just inches away from him. When they saw the expression on Wang Mingyuan's face, they found him extremely unfamiliar. He was completely different from the Wang Mingyuan in their memories. Shun Yuqi and the six high and mighty existences were filled with excitement at this moment. The light from the statue's hands shot into the sky, turning into a halo that spread in all directions, as if it wanted to turn the entire sky into a holy radiance. All the citizens of Holy City saw this scene. Some of the older elders couldn't help but cheer. They still remembered the period when the holy glow enveloped Holy City. It was the most peaceful period of their lives. Chapter 338. The statue's radiance was boundless. The resplendent holy radiance was like a divine pagoda that reached the heavens, reaching all the way to the horizon. The divine radiance spread in the sky, bathing the entire holy city in it. Those who knew of the holy tower's radiance were overjoyed. The 6 senators were overjoyed as well. After decades, the holy city's radiance had finally appeared in front of the world once again. This is the true holy city. This is the holy radiance that can shake the soul. The holy city is eternal, and the Federation is immortal. A senator said excitedly with a fervent look in his eyes. Shinyuchi was also excited. To be able to accomplish such a huge matter was undoubtedly a huge credit to the Bureau. In front of the holy tower, the entire altar rose up with a resplendent holy radiance. The humans inside the altar melted like snow under the holy radiance. Shinyuchi and the 6 senators weren't surprised because they had long known that such a thing would happen. Back when the 6 families first opened the holy tower, something similar had happened. How could a god's holiness be tainted by humans? Once the holy tower was opened, everything on the altar would be purified. It was inevitable. No human could survive on the altar, including the 6 heroes back then. They knew very well how terrifying the holy tower's power was. It came from the power of the 6 holy temples. Apart from the mighty existences in the holy temples, it was impossible for humans to resist it. Zhouwen felt his body being corroded by the intense holy radiance. He hurriedly summoned the stone chi to transform into stone armor to protect his body, but the stone armor rapidly melted under the terrifying holy radiance as though it was being rapidly gnawed at by termites. Jiang Yan and company were in a similar situation. It didn't look good. "Teacher, let's quickly escape." As Zhong Zia spoke, he slashed his sword at the radiance before him. However, his sword was melted by the radiance. How could he possibly slash it? Escape? Why should I escape? I came here to wait for this moment. Wang Mingyuan looked at the resplendent statue in front of him with an abnormally determined gaze. "Teacher, what are you trying to do?" Although Zhouwen had always felt that Wang Mingyuan wouldn't harm them, everything Wang Mingyuan had done had exceeded his imagination. Wang Mingyuan turned his head and looked at the 4 of them. "As master and disciple, I have something to give you. Treat it as my final legacy in this world. Keep it as a memento." Crack! The shackles on Wang Mingyuan's body were automatically broken, and they fell to the ground like garbage. Before they could even touch the ground, they were melted by the holy light. Wang Mingyuan's body emitted a strange power that blocked the holy brilliance, preventing Zhouwen and company from being injured by it. Zhouwen looked at the power emitted by Wang Mingyuan and found it somewhat familiar, but he couldn't figure out why. Wang Mingyuan had already been captured for a few days. He was probably only wearing a prisoner's robe, but when he reached into the air, it was as if he had pierced through the air and grabbed something out of thin air. It was a thick diary that looked very old, but it had been preserved very well. Zhouwen had seen this diary before. It was the diary that Wang Mingyuan carried with him. Usually, whenever he had any thoughts or inspiration, he would write them down in the diary. "Jiang Yan, Your personality is the most similar to mine. You also like research the most. These are some of my years of experience and thoughts. I'll give them to you, Wang Mingyuan said as he handed the diary to Jiang Yin. Jiang Yin took the diary with both hands and didn't say a word. Wang Mingyuan didn't say anything else either. The power on his body grew stronger and stronger to the point where his body was affected by it. It seemed to tremble slightly, and one could even see ripples of power flowing through his body. Wang Mingyuan took out a sheathed sword and handed it to Zhongzia. Your personality is too extreme. It's inevitable that there will be deviations in your actions. I'll give this sword to you. It might be of some help to you. Zhongzia didn't say a word as he took the sword and stared straight at Wang Mingyuan. Wang Mingyuan knew what Zhongzia wanted to hear, but he didn't say anything to him. He took out something and handed it to Hui Haifeng. You have great ambitions. You will definitely accomplish great things in the future. This is some of the savings I've saved over the years. It's useless now. Take it. Yes, counselor. Hui Haifeng didn't reject it and respectfully received the tiny box. It was unknown what was inside. Finally, Wang Mingyuan's gaze landed on One as he said with a smile, "You are the purest one among the four. You don't have as many thoughts and desires as the three of them, but you are also the most difficult to understand. Although I know what you want, I can't do it now. Apart from that, what other wishes do you have? Why don't you tell me?" At that moment, the power on Wang Mingyuan's body had almost condensed into a corporeal state. It transformed into wisps of light that circulated around his body, and the aura that when found familiar, became stronger. Now, Zhou finally recalled where he had sensed this aura. Beneath Dragon's Well, the white cocoon that the white dragon was guarding had the same aura. However, the aura on the white cocoon was very weak, so weak that it was almost difficult to sense. Zhou only had a vague impression of it. However, Wang Mingyuan's aura was very strong, so strong that it almost suffocated Zhou. Could it be that teacher? Zhou had a bad feeling as he looked at Wang Mingyuan in front of him. I don't have much time. Answer me. What do you want? Wang Mingyuan's expression was somewhat odd. His entire body was trembling as though he was trying his best to suppress his voice. Zhou looked at Wang Mingyuan bitterly. After a moment, he said, "Teacher, can you give me a drop of your blood?" Zhou's words left Wang Mingyuan, Zhongzia, and company taken aback. Wang Mingyuan looked at Zhou and smiled. You are indeed the most difficult person to understand. With that said, Wang Mingyuan ignored Zhou and slowly turned around. With his back facing Zhou and company, his gaze was fixed on the resplendent holy statue. I've been really happy spending time with all of you. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Today, we will part ways, and we will no longer be separated. As our final farewell, I'll give you a small gift. With Wang Mingyuan's trembling words, the power in his body completely erupted like a volcano. His body also changed. The black hair on his head instantly turned white and rapidly grew, almost reaching the ground. A pair of crystal-like horns grew out of his head, and his entire body underwent an extraordinary change. Unfortunately, Zhou and company couldn't see Wang Mingyuan's face. Otherwise, they would definitely discover that his face had become handsome and strange. His eyes emitted an indescribable, strange glow. The terrifying power rose from his body as though countless divine lights surrounded his body. It caused his clothes to flutter without any wind as his body floated up and slowly rose in front of the holy statue. Chapter 339. What's that? In their excitement, the 6 senators suddenly saw a figure appear in the resplendent holy brilliance. Furthermore, it was right in front of the statue. That's Wang Mingyuan. That's not right. That aura. Why does it seem like a dimensional creature? The noble woman stared at Wang Mingyuan in front of the statue and said in surprise, "What does he want?" The middle-aged man asked with a frown, as though he felt something was amiss. Naturally, no one could answer his question. They didn't know what Wang Mingyuan wanted to do. They even believed that Wang Mingyuan was already dead. No human could survive under the holy brilliance. He should have been purified long ago. Shin Yuchi's expression was also uncertain. He had a bad feeling, very bad, as though something terrible was about to happen. Although they wanted to stop Wang Mingyuan, no one moved because they didn't dare enter the vicinity of the statue. The holy brilliance came from the power of the 6 holy temples. Barging into the holy altar was equivalent to fighting the 6 holy temples at the same time. Even mythical companion beasts couldn't resist it. They would be purified by the holy brilliance. Wang Mingyuan floated in front of the statue and stared at it as he muttered to himself, "If there's really an unforgivable sin in this world, blame it on me." With that said, Wang Mingyuan slowly raised his arm. His arm was like a blade that was raised high above his head. His fingertips pointed at the sky as the strange power on his arm condensed into something corporeal. What? What does he want? Shin Yuchi's voice was already trembling. He seemed to have guessed what Wang Mingyuan wanted to do, but he couldn't believe that something like that would happen. Wang Mingyuan, the 6 senators roared in unison, but it was useless. Boom! Wang Mingyuan's arm slashed down, and the terrifying power was like the blade of heaven. It sliced the huge statue into 2 from middle. The 2 halves of the statue slowly collapsed to the sides. The entire holy city fell into a great panic. Everyone stared blankly at the godlike figure floating in the air and the 2 halves of the holy statue that were slowly collapsing. It was as if something in their hearts had collapsed along with the broken holy statue. Boom! The entire holy city seemed to shake because of the collapse of the holy statue. The holy statue was smashed into pieces, but the holy light that came from the sky did not stop. Thousands of holy lights bombarded down from the sky, like a divine punishment at the end of the world. Without the holy statue praying to the heavens, the holy light would directly bombard the ground. No one could predict what the consequences would be. Perhaps the entire holy city would be reduced to rubble in an instant. Instantly, everyone was stunned. Even a powerful counselor, an existence with a mythical companion beast, felt his scalp tingle. He quickly retreated in a bid to escape the area. Boom! The holy light fell, but it didn't hit the ground. Wang Mingyuan, who was like a god in the air, endured the terrifying holy light. Boundless holy light crashed into his body like a heavenly river. His body was bathed in the holy light, but he did not seem to be injured at all. Instead, terrifying power gathered on his body, causing his body to continue to undergo strange changes. Boom! Amidst the holy light, Wang Mingyuan spread out 6 pairs of butterfly-shaped wings of light. A halo that represented godhood appeared behind him as though a true god had descended. On the altar, Zhou Wen and company were already dumbfounded. Wang Mingyuan's entire body emitted an extremely terrifying aura. They had never seen such a terrifying existence. Even though Zhou Wen had seen the white dragon under Dragon's Well, the black dragon in the underground sea, and the 2 mythical dimensional creatures in the temple, they weren't as terrifying as the present Wang Mingyuan. Compared to them, it was like the difference between the stars and the moon. Wang Mingyuan's body emitted an indescribable godhood glow. When the glow landed on Zhou Wen and company, they felt as though their bodies had been cleansed by holy water. Every cell in their bodies, flesh, and bones were transforming as though they had been reborn. Now, Zhou Wen finally knew what the final gift Wang Mingyuan was talking about was. However, looking at the godlike Wang Mingyuan in the sky, Zhou Wen didn't feel any joy. Instead, he felt inexplicably uncomfortable. Wang Mingyuan's aura was completely dimensional. Zhou Wen could no longer sense a human aura from him. It was as though he was no longer a human, but a dimensional creature that was an enemy of humans. Little one, what will you choose between pain and death? Zhou Wen couldn't help but recall the question Wang Mingyuan had asked him. Now, Zhou Wen seemed to understand. Wang Mingyuan had been doing research all these years, hoping to find a way out to deal with the situation after the dimensional zone's restraints disappeared. However, he didn't see hope, so he chose another path. Just like the question he asked, he chose to live in pain. The pain he suffered might not come from his body, but the pain in his heart might be more torturous than the pain in his body. In the sky, Wang Mingyuan, who was like a god or a demon, raised his head and looked at the sky. His expression was cold and emotionless as he said, "Since there is no power to destroy demons in this world, I will become a demon among demons." With that said, the terrifying power from his body surged into the sky. Even a holy brilliance was dispersed by his power. It entered the void and tore a huge black hole in the sky. Countless illusions appeared in the black hole. There were fairies flying in the sky, terrifying dragons, roaring behemoths, holy angels, and ferocious demons. Everyone stared at the black hole in the sky in a daze. Before they could snap to their senses, countless roars came from the black hole. 100-meter-long black-armored centipede flapped its 6 wings and rushed out of the black hole. In the next second, all sorts of terrifying dimensional creatures rushed out of the black hole. Instantly, they blotted out the sky as though the apocalypse had arrived. Wang Mingyuan looked down at Zhou Wan and company on the ground before decisively turning around and stepping into the air, walking towards the black hole in the sky. None of the countless powerful dimensional creatures dared approach him. They automatically made way for him as though he was the king of this world. Any creature that stood in front of him would not be able to withstand the wrath of a king. "Teacher," Zhou Wan felt an inexplicable pain in his heart as though he had lost something. He couldn't help but cry out. However, no one responded to him. Wang Mingyuan had already walked into the black hole, and his figure gradually vanished. However, a drop of bright red blood tore through space and floated in front of Zhou Wan like a drop of blood crystal. The drop of blood was bright red and resplendent, giving off a warm feeling. It was holy without any evil aura. Chapter 340. The entire holy city was in chaos. Terrifying dimensional creatures constantly rushed out of the black hole like locusts that blotted out the sky. They charged into holy city and wreaked havoc. There were clashes of forces and the wails of humans everywhere. It was unknown how many innocent humans had died as a result, and how many homes had been destroyed. Zhou Wan didn't know if Wang Mingyuan's choice was right or wrong. It wasn't a question he could figure out. He reached out and grabbed the drop of crystalline blood. The lost immortal sutra immediately circulated crazily as it absorbed the blood. Zhou Wan immediately felt a strange force spread through his body. "What are you waiting for? Why aren't you taking advantage of the chaos to storm out of Holy City? Do you want to wait for those fellows to capture us?" Zhongzia pushed Zhou Wan. He wasn't sad anymore. No matter what Wang Mingyuan became, Zhongzia believed that it was enough as long as he was alive. Jiang Yin and Hui Haifeng ran out together. Holy City was in chaos now. Humans were fighting dimensional creatures everywhere, so no one was in the mood to pay attention to the 4 of them. The 4 of them retreated as they fought. They saw powerful humans riding dragons and soaring into the sky to fight the dimensional creatures. There were also people flying in on sword kinesis flight. The sword beams were like thousands of meteors, instantly killing large swathes of dimensional creatures. All sorts of terrifying experts tore through the air to fight, but it was difficult for them to kill all the dimensional creatures that had invaded Holy City. Furthermore, the black hole was constantly open, allowing dimensional creatures to constantly barge in. The flames of war raged everywhere. Boom! As Zhou Wan and company were fleeing for their lives, a tyrannical 8-headed snake landed in front of them. The 8 snake heads spewed out different powers such as wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. Instantly, the surroundings turned into an apocalyptic battlefield. Many ordinary citizens who were fleeing died tragically under the various terrifying powers. With their exit blocked, Zhou Wan and company could only retreat. Zhou figure flashed as he used ghost steps to dodge the venom that spewed at him. However, just as Luoluo landed, he saw a winged scorpion descend from the sky. Its tail carried a cold beam as it shot at him. Zhou drew his saber and slashed. Bamboo blade immediately sliced the scorpion into two, but more flying scorpions rushed over like locusts. Hui Haifeng, Jiang Yin, and Zhong Zia were also in a bitter battle. The entire holy city was filled with dimensional creatures. It was too difficult for them to rush out. Everyone, find an opportunity to rush out. If there's an opportunity, leave and regroup at the academy, Hui Haifeng shouted when he saw that everyone had been scattered. Zhou knew that the strength of the four of them was too minute in such a battlefield. All they could do was seek an opportunity to escape. It was impossible to charge out forcefully, so all Zhou could do was find an opportunity to charge out. He couldn't care less about anything else. He believed that with Jiang Yin, Zhong Zia, and Hui Haifeng's abilities, they wouldn't die so easily. Boom! A mountain-like monster landed on Zhou Wen's path. It was still a few hundred meters away from him, but when it punched the ground, it immediately reduced the streets and buildings in a radius of more than 1,000 meters to dust. The shattered matter collided and killed the humans within range. Zhou quickly brandished the bamboo blade in his hand and slashed apart the fragments that flew at him. He was still wearing the stone armor, but there were still many places on his body that had been pierced by the fragments, leaving wounds on his body. Zhou gritted his teeth and fled in another direction. The lost immortal sutra in his body was still rapidly circulating, as though he had reached a certain juncture. He was about to break through. Boom! The mountain-like monster slammed the ground again, but this time the ground didn't shatter. Instead, it produced a huge suction force that sucked everything around it towards the mountain-like monster. Zhou bamboo blade stabbed into the ground, but his entire body was dragged towards the mountain. The bamboo blade left a deep mark on the ground, but it couldn't stop his body from flying towards the mountain-like monster. Zhou turned his head and saw that there were countless mouths on the mountain-like monster's body. The humans that had been sucked in were directly swallowed. It was unknown what would happen to them. With a thought, Zhou activated the demonic astral wheel. He used the suction force of the demonic astral wheel to firmly latch onto the ground and forcefully resist the strange mountain suction force, preventing himself from flying towards it. However, the strange mountain suction force was just too strong. Zhou was unable to escape the suction force and could only barely prevent himself from being sucked in. Just as Zhou was pondering over how to escape the strange mountain suction force, he saw a figure tear through the air. It was a woman dressed in black. She stepped on an ancient bronze sword and tore through the air. She entered the strange mountain's suction force, but she wasn't sucked in by it. All she did was float in front of it. She gestured with both hands, and immediately, a sword beam condensed between her hands. Then, with a push, the sword beam flew towards the strange mountain. As the sword light flew, the surrounding void trembled and actually split into beams of sword light. One split into two, two split into four split into eight, eight split into 16. By the time the sword light rushed to the front of the strange mountain, it had already become a sword cloud. The strange mountain opened its mouth. After all, the entire mountain was a mouth as it swallowed the cloud-like sword beam. The black-robed woman frowned slightly as the ancient bronze sword beneath her feet hummed. She flew up and charged straight at the strange mountain. The strange mountain did not hesitate. It opened its mouth and swallowed the ancient greenish-bronze sword. But a moment later, sword beams shot out from the strange mountain's body. It was as if sharp swords had pierced through the strange mountain's body. Soon, the strange mountain had turned into a hedgehog. Boom! The strange mountain collapsed, and the ancient sword returned to the black-robed woman's feet. She didn't stop as she flew towards the other terrifying dimensional creatures on her sword. Wherever she went, sword beams surged like a heavenly river, killing countless dimensional creatures. However, Zhou wasn't in the mood to watch. Once the strange mountain died, the suction force naturally disappeared. Zhou chose a direction and rushed out of Holy City. However, there were too many dimensional creatures. Zhou killed countless dimensional creatures along the way, but he only reached the third ring road of Holy City. Jiang Yin and company had long vanished. Apart from dimensional creatures, there were only humans fighting. Most of them were from the military, and many ordinary people had already turned into corpses. A little girl sat in the ruins, crying as a centipede several meters long crawled towards her. Zhou's rationality told him that now wasn't the time to be a busybody. It was more important to rush out of Holy City and escape. However, his hand couldn't help but slash out a saber beam and split the centipede into two. "Follow me first." Zhou saw that there was no one around him apart from corpses. Even if the girl's parents weren't dead, they probably wouldn't be here. All he could do was carry her and rush out of Holy City with her. Chapter 341. The girl was obedient as she reached out and hugged Zhou's neck. Although there were still tears on her face, she stopped crying. Suddenly, Zhou felt his heart palpitate. He brandished his saber and slashed at the girl in his arms. At the same time, he pushed her out with his other hand. The girl's figure instantly retreated more than 10 meters. There was blood at the corner of her mouth as she licked it with her tiny tongue. Her face was filled with greed. Zhou, when touched his neck and his hand, was immediately stained with blood. There were 2 rows of teeth marks on his neck. If he had reacted any slower, his neck would have been bitten off. "Are you a human or a dimensional creature?" Zhou held the bamboo blade and calmly sized up the girl. Up to now, he still couldn't tell that the girl had the aura of a dimensional creature. No matter how he looked at it, she looked like a 2 or 3-year-old human girl. However, her actions and abilities had proven that she was definitely not an ordinary human girl. However, the girl ignored him. With a flash, she pounced at Zhou so fast that she was like a blurry shadow. Without any hesitation, Zhou used transcendent flying immortal with a bamboo blade in his hand. Instantly, saber shadows flashed as he slashed at the girl. However, the girl's movement technique was surprisingly fast. Zhou's lightning-fast saber technique was actually dodged by her figure. She was even faster and more bizarre than Ghost King's movement technique. The girl rushed over from the gap in the saber technique and pounced forward in a bid to bite Zhou's neck. The banana fan appeared in Zhou's other hand as he fanned it at the girl who pounced at him. The granding wind swept her up into the air. Zhou followed with ghost steps and slashed out the demonic astral wheel at the girl in midair. A blood-red saber beam tore through the blade and slashed at the girl's body like a blood wheel, slicing through her clothes. However, when the demonic astral wheel slashed at her flesh and blood, it failed to slice through her fair skin. It was as though the fair skin wasn't flesh and blood, but extremely tough steel. Zhou could understand why the demonic astral wheel couldn't injure the girl, but when the sharp bamboo blade slashed at her, it failed to slice through her flesh. It immediately alarmed Zhou. The bamboo blade was sharp. Even an epic creature with relatively strong physical defense couldn't completely withstand it. However, when the saber slashed at her, it didn't even tear through her skin. All it did was send her flying. This was somewhat terrifying. The little girl landed on the ground as if she wasn't injured at all. She was just a little angry, and she pounced forward again. Zhou retreated as he fought. He used all sorts of means, but he failed to injure the girl. The girl was also odd. She didn't have the aura of a dimensional creature, but her behavior was like one. What was even stranger was that she didn't have any special abilities. All she did was have great strength and speed. Furthermore, her skin and flesh were unimaginably tough. Zhou failed to injure her when he injected his ashen palm into her body. Zhou couldn't kill her, so he wanted to escape her. However, she hated Zhou very much and kept chasing after him. Zhou used ghost steps several times to escape her, but she quickly caught up to him. The girl was like a vengeful ghost. She wouldn't rest until she killed Zhou. She kept chasing after him and attacking him, as though she wanted to skin him alive. Zhou couldn't kill her, nor could he escape her. All he could do was retreat as he fought. The black hole in the sky was slowly shrinking, and the dimensional creatures that rushed and decreased significantly. The 6 hero families in Holy City had already sent out all their members to cooperate with the military to kill the invading dimensional creatures. Although the situation was gradually under control, the losses this time were unprecedented since the establishment of Holy City. Back then, Jing Daoxian had only charged into the Federation building and killed some Federation officials and government workers. Now, this disaster had caused the ordinary citizens of the entire Holy Land to suffer. Countless people had died. Zhou was certain that after today, his teacher would probably replace Jing Daoxian and become a devil that everyone despised. His infamy might even be worse than Jing Daoxian's. Teacher, is it really worth it? Zhou didn't know if Wang Mingyuan's choice was right. Just as Wang Mingyuan had said, to risk his life to save that woman or to join in the evil and think of a way to save her was a difficult question to begin with. Without any time to think, Zhou had already rushed out of Holy City's vicinity. There were fewer dimensional creatures around him, but the little girl was still pestering him like a haunting ghost. No matter how many times Zhou struck her, even using Overlord Sword with Ever Victorious, the girl wasn't injured at all. It was as though she was pestering Zhou relentlessly. What the hell is this thing? Zhou fought with great difficulty. If not for his companion beasts helping him and giving him a chance to catch his breath and recover his primordial energy, he would have long been bitten to death by the girl. Zhou felt the lost immortal sutra in his body circulate faster and faster. His entire body seemed to undergo an earth-shattering change as a power was being nurtured in his body. The starting point of the power was his life providence, but it was inextricably linked to his body, bloodline, and even his soul. It was an indescribable feeling. If he had to describe it, Zhou felt as though his soul was splitting apart. Of course, this was only his own feeling. Am I about to condense a life soul? What will my life soul be? As Zhou retreated, he guessed inwardly. Will it be a life soul in the form of a woman? Or will it be a tool? The reason why Zhou immediately thought of a woman was because of the existence of the Sai of the King Life Providence. It made him vaguely feel that it looked like a woman. Typically, a life soul would be greatly affected by a life providence. For example, a person with the Arhat Life Providence would likely have a Buddha figure or a Buddha statue. For someone like Feng Qiuyin who had the Swift Saber Heavenly King Life Providence, his life soul would definitely be related to sabers in the future. Therefore, Zhou felt that his life soul was very likely to be in the form of a woman, but this was only his guess. Oh no! The formation of Zhou's life soul had reached its most critical moment. His entire body was sublimating, and his soul seemed to have left his body, preventing him from moving. What was worse was that the girl was still chasing after him. Zhou stood there motionless, but the girl immediately pounced forward and opened her mouth to bite his neck. Damn it! Why does it have to happen now? Zhou was so depressed that he nearly vomited blood. Unfortunately, the lost immortal sutra wasn't under his control. After absorbing Wang Mingyuan's drop of blood, it automatically began its evolution. Chapter 342. The Stone Chi and Overlord Sword Snake were still in their armor and sword states. Without Zhou's orders, it was impossible for them to transform into pets to fight the enemy. Although White Shadow of Poison charged at the girl, it wasn't of much use against her. The girl's speed was above White Shadow of Poison's, so its poison couldn't injure her. Dr. Darkness's scalpel couldn't hold the girl in place at all. The syringe couldn't pierce her skin at all. It was completely useless. Zhou didn't summon other companion beasts like Tyrant Behemoth because their levels were too low and they weren't of much use. Seeing that the girl had already rushed forward, Zhou's consciousness was completely drawn in by the power in his body. He couldn't care about the outside world as though he was in danger. With a bang, Banana Fairy automatically dispelled her companion form without any orders and returned to her original form. She sat on the banana leaf and stood in front of Jowen. She blew at the girl. The Grandine wind immediately sent the girl flying hundreds of meters away, causing her to slam into a forest. She broke countless trees that were as thick as two people hugging each other, creating a long ravine in the forest. But soon, the girl rushed out of the forest again. There was still frost on her clothes, but her body wasn't frostbitten. Seeing the girl rush back, Banana Fairy gritted her teeth and blew out another puff of Grandine wind, sending the girl flying again. However, the Grandine wind this time was clearly much weaker than the first time. The little girl was not blown away as far as before. She only landed in the forest and broke two trees. The Grandine wind expended a lot of primordial energy. In such a short period of time, Banana Fairy's recovery of primordial energy was limited, so the Grandine wind she blew out was naturally much weaker. The girl was too stubborn. As though she wanted to fight to her death, she rushed over and lunged at Jowen again. Banana Fairy blew another puff of Grandine wind, sending the girl flying again. She repeatedly prevented the girl from rushing towards Jowen, who was condensing his life soul to advance to the epic stage. However, the Grandine wind that Banana Fairy blew out became weaker and weaker. In the beginning, it could send the girl flying hundreds of meters away, creating a ravine in the ground. However, after 10 times, the Grandine wind could only send the girl flying dozens of meters away. Furthermore, after the girl landed, she quickly rushed over, not giving Banana Fairy a chance to catch her breath. Banana Fairy's face was pale. The Grandine wind she could produce was already extremely weak, but she still stood in front of Zhou when without any intention of retreating. A gust of Grandine wind blew out again, but the girl wasn't sent flying by it. She continued walking towards Zhou when amidst the strong winds. At the instant the Grandine wind stopped, the little girl flew up and grabbed Banana Fairy's neck with one hand. She dragged her off the banana leaf and pressed her to the ground. The girl's eyes were cold as she was about to snap Banana Fairy's neck when she suddenly felt a force erupt from Jowen's side. She couldn't help but look up. An invisible force rose from Jowen's body, causing his body to float uncontrollably. His entire body emitted a strange force that enveloped his entire body. The girl stared at Zhou when in midair as her eyes shimmered. It was as though she had seen something that surprised her. She was momentarily stunned. At that moment, Jowen finally opened his eyes. At the same time, wisps of invisible flames rose from his body. It was an indescribable power. It contained Jowen's essence, energy, and even his essence, vitality, and spirit. However, it was different from ordinary essence energy. It wasn't a pure energy body like a companion beast. It was a magical power that seemed to be a form of energy, but it also seemed to be a life form. The energy constantly rose from Jowen's body and gradually condensed behind him, as though it had formed a legendary life soul. Jowen could sense the existence of his life soul and the terrifying power contained within it, but he couldn't see it. It was as though it was transparent and invisible. Jowen wasn't in the mood to study why he couldn't see his life soul. When he saw Banana Fairy being pinned to the ground by the girl's neck, Jowen was already enraged. He drew his bamboo blade and slashed at the girl. However, when he slashed out, Jowen felt that it was somewhat different from usual. Usually when he slashed out, it was his own strength. But now, when he slashed out, Jowen felt a force that came from outside his body injected into his blade. No, to be more precise, his entire body seemed to be enveloped by a baffling force. When he brandished his saber, it was as though someone was hugging his body, holding his hand, and brandishing the saber with him. The speed and strength of this strike completely exceeded Jowen's expectations. The blade seemed to teleport. After a brief moment of disappearance, it appeared in front of the girl. The girl revealed a look of surprise as she extended her arms to block the blade. Immediately, blood splattered as the girl's arm was sliced open. Through the wound, one could see the flesh and bones inside. Her body was also sent flying and fell to the ground, plowing a 100-meter-long ravine in the soil where the tree roots were entangled. Zhou looked at the saber in his hand and was slightly taken aback. The strength of this strike had completely exceeded his expectations. Logically speaking, although he had advanced to the epic stage, his physical stats hadn't improved. It was impossible for him to suddenly become so strong. Even if he could become stronger, it would be after he absorbed the stat crystal and raised his stats to a higher level. But now, he hadn't even done anything, and he was already this strong. Is this the power of a life soul? Zhou glanced at his body, but he didn't see anything. He clearly felt the existence of a life soul outside his body, but he couldn't see it. Banana Fairy flew back and rubbed her neck, looking very uncomfortable. Zhou glanced at the girl and couldn't help but frown when he saw her get up from the ground again. He gripped the saber in his hand tightly, prepared to end her completely. Such a vicious creature couldn't be allowed to live in this world. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble in the future. With her vengeful personality, she definitely wouldn't stop until she killed Zhou. Zhou drew his saber and was about to slash at the girl who had just gotten up when he suddenly saw a sword beam flash in the sky. A black figure rode a sword and blocked in front of him. When Zhou saw who it was, he couldn't help but frown slightly. The person in front of him was the one who had killed the strange mountain in Holy City. Chapter 343. Why did you kill a child? The woman in black was clearly the same as Zhou. She only believed that it was a human child. When she passed by and saw Zhou when slashing at the girl from midair, she didn't see the previous story. After confirming that the girl wasn't a dimensional creature, but a human, the woman in black rode her sword in front of the girl. However, she had no intention of attacking. All she wanted to do was figure out what had happened. She's not human, Zhou said to the woman in black. How can she not be? Before the woman in black could finish her sentence, she felt a pain in her calf. The girl pounced over and hugged her leg. She thought that the girl was afraid, but to her surprise, the girl bit her calf. Her white teeth sank into her flesh, nearly cracking her calf bone. The woman in black was at the peak of the epic stage and had a high chance of entering the mythical stage. As for her ancient sword, it was already a mythical companion beast. Her physical strength was naturally not something a human child could injure. It immediately made her realize that what Zhou said was true. This was indeed not a human child. Bam! The woman in black subconsciously raised her leg and kicked the girl away. Then, just as she was about to continue her attack, her body suddenly swayed and she nearly fell to the ground. Her vision blurred as she immediately felt that something was amiss. He forced himself to command the ancient greenish-bronze sword to attack the little girl. He wanted to kill the little girl first, but when the ancient greenish-bronze sword flew out, she had already fallen to the ground. He didn't know if she was dead or not. Zhou was secretly alarmed as he subconsciously touched the wound on his neck. This woman was so valiant, but after being bitten by the girl, it was unknown if she was dead or alive. He had also been bitten by the girl, but he was fine. It was considered extremely lucky. Seeing the ancient bronze sword still fly towards the girl and penetrate her body, it flew back and automatically floated above the woman in black. Zhou knew that the woman wasn't dead. Otherwise, the companion beast should have dissipated after her death. Since the ancient bronze sword was still there, it meant that the woman in black was still alive. Zhou ignored the woman in black and rushed towards the grass where the girl had fallen. Although he had seen her chest and heart penetrated by the ancient bronze sword, Zhou felt that she might not really be dead. Rushing to the grass where the little girl had fallen, he saw some blood in the grass, but there was no trace of the little girl. Dang! Zhou heard a commotion from the woman in black's direction. He hurriedly turned around and saw the girl grabbing the hilt of the ancient bronze sword. As for the ancient bronze sword, it was covered in blood. It was trembling and didn't kill the girl. Although Zhou didn't know that the ancient bronze sword was a mythical existence, he had seen the might of the strange bronze sword when it slashed the strange mountain. The might was far inferior to the epic banana fairy. Even if it lost its owner's control, it was unlikely that it would allow outsiders to capture it. However, when the girl grabbed the ancient bronze sword, it only trembled and didn't emit any sword beams. This left Zhou puzzled. Soon, Zhou realized that something was amiss. The ancient bronze sword was covered in blood. It was undoubtedly the girl's blood. The fresh blood slowly seeped into the ancient greenish bronze sword. It wasn't simply stained with blood, but the quality of the ancient greenish bronze sword itself had changed. The original bronze quality had turned into the color of purple copper after the blood seeped into it. It looked very strange. Furthermore, as the blood seeped in, the ancient bronze sword's resistance seemed to weaken. Zhou was alarmed. He didn't dare hesitate as he drew his saber and slashed at her, hoping to kill her there and then. Dang! The girl brandished the ancient bronze sword in her hand and collided with the bamboo blade. Although she had yet to activate the ancient bronze sword's power, Zhou's bamboo blade failed to slice through the ancient bronze sword. All it did was send the girl flying with her saber. Without waiting for the girl to land, Zhou had already used ghost steps to close the distance between them. He slashed out with transcendent flying immortal again as saber beams crisscrossed in a bid to slay the girl. The girl brandished the ancient bronze sword to block transcendent flying immortal's attack, but she failed to completely block its saber force. Now that he had the augmentation of his life soul, Zhou's transcendent flying immortal was faster and more ruthless than before. It slashed at her body, leaving a deep gash that revealed bones. The girl's body flew out as the ancient bronze sword landed to the side. Zhou didn't dare hope that a strike could kill her since she hadn't died after being pierced through the heart by the ancient bronze sword. He immediately chased after her. Seeing the girl fall to the ground and indeed not dead, glaring fiercely at Zhou slashed out with the bamboo blade in his hand. Hum! A sword hum sounded as Zhou immediately felt that something was amiss. He instantly activated ghost steps, and when he appeared dozens of meters away, he saw a sword beam sweep past the spot where he had been standing. A deep gash that was hundreds of meters long appeared. The companion beast that had already transformed into the purple bronze sword floated beside the girl. The purple sword beam shimmered like a demonic venomous snake that was flicking its tongue, ready to devour anyone at any moment. How could this happen? Zhou wore a strange expression. Once a companion beast signed a contract, it was almost impossible for it to betray them. When the master lived, the companion beast would live. When a master died, the companion beast would die. Although there were some methods, one had to pay a huge price to tear up the contract with a companion beast. However, that was under the premise that the human took the initiative to do so. He had never heard of a companion beast taking the initiative to betray, much less that a companion beast could be snatched away and used by others. What's the background of this girl? Zhou was alarmed. Zhou's first thought was to turn around and flee. He had seen the might of the ancient bronze sword before. It could even kill an existence like the strange mountain that might be a mythical creature. Although he had advanced to the epic stage, he was still far from being its match. Now that the ancient bronze sword was in the girl's hands, she would probably launch a terrifying attack on him. As expected, the girl grabbed the ancient sword's hilt and slashed at Zhou. A purple sword beam immediately tore through the sword, and with an indestructible stance, it instantly sliced everything in front of it into two as it arrived in front of Zhou. The sword beam was just too fast. After Zhou used ghost steps and was augmented by his life soul, he barely dodged it. The sword beam shot out more than 1,000 meters into the forest. Everything in front of it was sliced through, including the Har Mountain rocks. It was like cutting through tofu. Chapter 344. The girl had a ferocity that ordinary people found difficult to match. She brandished the purple copper sword and charged forward again. The injuries on her body seemed to have mostly healed. This recovery speed wasn't inferior to Li Xian's immortal god of combat. It might even be stronger. Zhou didn't escape when he saw the astonishing sword beam emitted by the purple copper sword. Instead of retreating, he advanced and used ghost steps to its limits. As he dodged the sword beam, he approached the girl and slashed at her neck with bamboo blade. If the ancient purple copper sword had automatically fought, Zhou would definitely have fled as far as he could. However, when he realized that the girl was holding the ancient purple copper sword in battle, he felt that he had a chance. The girl was very strong and fast. Coupled with the ancient purple copper sword's indestructible sword beam, she looked terrifying. However, she clearly didn't know any combat techniques, much less any sword techniques. She was only fighting instinctively. With her holding the ancient purple copper sword in battle, it wasn't as powerful as when the ancient purple copper sword fought on its own. At the very least, Zhou saw an opportunity. Like a ghost, Zhou pushed the Dragon Gate Fairy skill, 9 Dragons Art, and Ghost Steps to their limits. The problem of primordial energy that had plagued him previously no longer existed. With his life soul, he felt that his primordial energy seemed endless. He could continuously use Ghost Steps, Transcendent Flying Immortal, and other primordial energy skills that expended a lot of primordial energy, but he didn't feel any signs of his primordial energy being exhausted. With his life soul, Zhou seemed to have infinite skills. He could use all sorts of primordial energy skills without any need to consider the problem of primordial energy. Although he was facing a huge crisis, Zhou felt extremely carefree. The feeling of being able to use any primordial energy skill as he pleased was just too satisfying. In the past, he needed to make all sorts of calculations and conserve. Even with the augmentation of his Dao body, he could only use primordial energy skills intermittently. But now, the thrill of using one skill after another, as though he could use it indefinitely, was something he had never experienced before. Now, Zhou felt as though he had become a strengthened version of Lance. Lance's infinite primordial energy skill combo was because the primordial energy skills he chose consumed very little primordial energy. As for Zhou, he could use all sorts of primordial energy skills that consumed a lot of primordial energy consecutively. Furthermore, Zhou's every move seemed to have a booster installed. His strength and speed were greatly increased. Every step he took felt like he was being propelled forward by a jet. Now, Zhou really wanted to look at the information in-game to see what his life soul was. Although he enjoyed the benefits brought by the life soul, he couldn't see what it was. Zhou's figure constantly flashed around the girl. Although he couldn't clash head-on with the ancient purple copper sword's sword beam, the girl's brandishing of the ancient purple copper sword failed to hit him. Instead, Zhou's bamboo blade would occasionally slash across the girl's body, leaving bloody marks on her body. If it wasn't for the fact that the purple copper ancient sword strength was so powerful that the sword beam could destroy almost everything, forcing Zhou to retreat, the girl would have long been slain by him. The girl also felt that she was in extreme danger. No matter how she brandished the purple copper sword in her hand, she couldn't touch Zhou's body. This made her furious. The little girl gritted her teeth, dragged the purplish copper sword, and turned to run. How could Zhou let her escape? He chased after her with bamboo blade in hand. This girl was so vicious and had shocking abilities. If he couldn't kill her today, she would probably be a huge problem when she grew up and learned some techniques. She might even become another terrifying demoness in the history of the Federation. Zhou wished he could slay the girl with his saber, but the purple copper sword beam was too powerful. It made it difficult for Zhou to kill the girl directly. It was only because the girl was holding it that Zhou was able to limit its strength, allowing him to chase after her. If the girl were to directly throw it out and let the purple copper sword attack, Zhou would probably be the one running. The girl clearly didn't understand this logic. She held the purple copper sword and constantly slashed at him, but she failed to injure Zhou. Instead, Zhou left deep wounds on her body. With one chasing and the other escaping, they constantly fought. Soon, they rushed into the mountainous area. The purple copper sword's shocking sword beam sliced through some small mountains. The sword beam was just too shocking. What was even more shocking was that the girl gradually began to imitate Zhou Wen's movement techniques and various techniques in battle. Although she was far inferior to Zhou Wen and couldn't cause him any trouble, she improved rather quickly. What's this fellow's background? If she's a human, how can a human have such terrifying physique and abilities? The woman in black is such a powerful existence, but she was bitten to the point of death. Even the ancient bronze sword was forcefully snatched away. Such abilities are too terrifying. It's impossible for a human child to possess them. However, if she's a dimensional creature, why doesn't she have any aura of other species? She looks like a human no matter how I look at her. Zhou Wen thought of the dimensional black hole that Wang Mingyuan had opened. If this girl had really come out of the dimensional black hole, her origins must be extraordinary. Unfortunately, all of this was just a guess. Zhou Wen didn't plan on figuring out her origins. All he wanted to do was quickly kill her. No matter what, he couldn't let her grow up. The girl was already injured in many places. Many of the injuries were fatal to ordinary people, but she managed to survive. Furthermore, she could continue fighting. The injuries on her body could rapidly heal in battle. Apart from beheading her, Zhou Wen really didn't know how else to kill her. As the chase continued, the two of them rushed deep into the mountains. The girl was struck by Zhou Wen again and was sent flying. Her body fell outside a cliff. Zhou Wen chased after her and slashed at the girl's neck, not giving her a chance to land. In midair, the girl forcefully slashed out a sword beam, forcing Zhou Wen to dodge. Like an eagle, he circled in the air and dodged the sword beam before pouncing at the girl who had fallen to the bottom of the cliff. The girl clearly didn't have the ability to fly. There was no way for her to borrow strength in midair, so there was no way for her to dodge. Her face finally revealed a look of panic as she desperately brandished the purple copper sword. Zhou Wen's body was like a flying immortal as he flew in the air, dodging the shocking sword beams. Finally, he approached the girl and slashed at her neck. Blood splattered. Although the girl had tried her best to twist her neck, the wound on her neck was still terrifying. Her neck bone had been sliced in half. Just as Zhou Wen was about to continue slashing at the wound, he suddenly felt a terrifying force gush out from beneath the cliff. Chapter 345. Many strange vines extended out from beneath the cliff. A few of them wrapped around the girl, while the others swept toward Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen slashed repeatedly with the bamboo blade in his hand, but he only managed to injure the vines. He failed to sever them. Seeing that the vines were still sweeping towards him, he could only use the fairy spell to dodge their attack. However, the girl had already been pulled down the cliff by the vines. Zhou Wen summoned white shadow of poison and flapped his wings as he chased after the vines down the cliff. He wasn't sure what the vines were, but he knew that he couldn't let the girl survive. Otherwise, she would definitely become a huge problem in the future. Vines swept toward Zhou Wen. Thankfully, his movement technique combined with white shadow of poison's wings allowed him to dodge the vine's attack. He chased the girl to the bottom of the cliff. The scene below the cliff immediately alarmed Zhou Wen. Beneath the cliff was a huge mushroom that was about 2 to 3 stories tall. Or perhaps it was something like a Ganoderma. In any case, it was a fungus. The huge mushroom cap was black. From beneath the mushroom cap, many tendrils that looked like vines extended out. It was those tendrils that had wrapped around the girl and the purple copper sword in her hand. They had even attacked Zhou Wen. The little girl looked to be in extreme pain as the mushroom tendrils wrapped around her like blood-sucking leeches. The tips of the tendrils pierced into her skin and extracted her blood. The purple copper sword was bound by the mushroom tendrils and failed to escape. A plant-type dimensional creature can actually hold back the purple copper ancient sword, preventing it from escaping. What kind of place is this? How can there be such a terrifying plant-type dimensional creature? Zhou Wen looked around and had no idea where he was. He had chased the girl too deeply, so he had no idea where he was in the mountains. The mushroom tendrils swept over like an inescapable net. Zhou Wen slashed with the bamboo blade in his hand as his body constantly moved. Only then did he barely manage to dodge the attack of the mushroom tendrils. However, he couldn't do a thing to the huge mushroom. In fact, he couldn't even approach it. Seeing that the girl was about to be sucked dry, she let out a tragic cry as her body rapidly shriveled up. She looked to be in extreme pain as her face contorted. Find a good family in your next life. Zhou frowned slightly as he summoned the Overlord's sword. As his figure flashed, he found an opportunity to swing the Overlord's sword's sword beam and pierce through her body. Although the girl was doomed, there was no need for Zhou to add another strike. However, with her death, there was no need for him to watch her die in pain. It was good to let her rest in peace. Zhou's sword pierced through the girl's body. At that moment, perhaps because the mushroom had sucked away too much of her blood, the girl was already on the verge of death. Overlord's sword beam struck her body and killed her. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, he suddenly felt the mysterious phone on him vibrate. The phone flew out of his pocket. The phone screen lit up automatically. This was something that had never happened before. The last time Zhou's phone was taken away by the military had also checked his phone. However, when the military checked it, they couldn't open it no matter how hard they tried. It was as though it was out of battery or broken. But now, the phone actually moved on its own. The interface of the dead man tree appeared on the phone screen. At the same time, the camera on the phone aimed at the girl who had been killed and automatically took a photo. Then, Zhou saw the girl's corpse and the purple copper ancient sword vanish. And on the dead man tree, there was a tiny flower bud. The huge mushroom lost its target and immediately went crazy. Countless mushroom tentacles extended out from under the mushroom cap. It was unknown how many there were as they swept towards Zhou like a tidal wave. Zhou didn't dare hesitate. He grabbed the phone floating in front of him and flew out of the cliff. However, the roots were even faster than Zhou. In a blink of an eye, they had caught up to him. The grandine wind from the banana fan blew out, but it only managed to sway a portion of the mushroom tentacles. More of them swept over. Zhou could only use the cicada shedding technique to summon a few companion beasts that he usually didn't use and get them to face the mushroom tentacles. Taking advantage of the moment, the mushroom tentacles wrapped around the companion beasts. Zhou's figure flashed as he dodged the other mushroom tentacles and finally rushed out of the cliff. He turned back and saw that the golden warriors and stone Sheelants were instantly sucked to smithereens after being swept up by the mushroom's roots, scattering like dust. What a terrifying plant-type, dimensional creature. Zhou didn't dare stay any longer as he rushed up. He saw the mushroom tentacles rush out like a volcanic eruption, but they failed to grab Zhou. Zhou didn't dare fly randomly in the air. After leaving the cliff, he returned the way he came. The mushroom tentacles were limited in length, so they couldn't chase after him. This made Zhou feel much more at ease. After running for dozens of kilometers without any dimensional creatures appearing, Zhou finally heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly looked at the information on his phone. The blood-colored avatar's information had indeed changed greatly. It was somewhat different from when Zhou was at the legendary stage. Zhou 1. Epic Life Providence, Sigh of the King Life Soul, Slaughterer, Primordial Body, Strength, 22 Sun, Speed, 22 Trajectory, Constitution, 22 Sin, Essence Energy, 22 Taboo, Poison, 17 Wind Stat, 11 Essence Energy skills and companion beasts were still the same. There weren't any changes. The 4 basic stats had become 22. Zhou didn't know what the word sin behind Constitution meant, but he believed that it was the same as the suffix of the other 3 stats. It was a suffix obtained after breaking through the limit. However, he didn't know why it was sin after using his teacher's blood to break through. The name of the life soul was Slaughterer. When he looked at the information on the life soul, he realized that it was blank. There was no information at all. Zhou didn't know why his life soul had the name of Slaughterer. He was clearly a pacifist and didn't like killing. As for the suffix of primordial body, Zhou had already learned that a human's life soul was different from a dimensional creature's. A dimensional creature's life soul was fixed. It wouldn't change in the future, but a human's life soul could grow. In the beginning, it was a primordial body. After one evolution, it was an evolved body. After another evolution, it was a perfect body. At present, the strongest epic life soul among humans was a perfect body. Legend had it that if a perfect body improved further, it might become a mythical stage. Of course, this was only a legend. Zhou had never heard of a human evolving to the mythical stage. Zhou didn't wish to stay in the wilderness for too long. Thankfully, he had an excellent memory. He still remembered the way he came and rode the mutated stone Shi to a nearby city. When he arrived at a place with a signal, Zhou called in Sheng and asked him about the situation. Chapter 346. Young Master One, you shouldn't have gone to Holy City. There were countless casualties in Holy City this time. Wang Mingyuan's crime was too great. Even the Wang family was implicated. If it wasn't for the fact that the Wang family still has some influence in the league, the entire Wang family would have been finished. Even so, the Wang family is still in a terrible predicament. Their days aren't going well. As Wang Mingyuan's students, I'm afraid no one in the league will dare use you in the future, and Sheng said to Zhou, having clearly received the news from Holy City. Zhou fell silent. He didn't care if anyone dared to use him, but Wang Mingyuan's infamy was something that he probably couldn't wash away no matter what. Regardless of the reason why he had done such a thing, so many lives have been lost because of him. This was something that couldn't be washed away no matter what. Young Master One, where are you? I'll send someone to pick you up. As long as you return to Luoyang, no one in the league can touch you, and Sheng added. There's no need. I remember the way. I'll go back myself. Zhou rejected in Sheng. He believed that the path Sheng had taken him through wasn't too dangerous. With his present strength, he should be able to return to Luoyang safely. All right, be quick. Holy City is in chaos now. The 6 families in the Bureau can't spare the time or manpower to do anything to you, but things will be different in a while. You have to return to Luoyang as soon as possible, Sheng said. After hanging up, Zhou rode the stone Qi and headed for Luoyang. And Sheng was right. He had to return to Luoyang as soon as possible. In the past, the Bureau had wanted to capture him because of a little suspicion. Now that his teacher, Wang Mingyuan, had committed such a heinous crime, and they had been by his side, Zhou refused to believe that the 6 families would ignore the 4 of them. Therefore, he had to return to Luoyang as soon as possible. If it really didn't work, he could only escape into a dimensional zone. He didn't encounter any danger along the way. Zhou rode the mutated stone Qi, which was even faster than a car. However, it was too bumpy, making it uncomfortable to game. Zhou observed the dead man tree on his phone every day and saw the flower bud grow by the day. It was very similar to the situation after Yin Zhen's death. From the looks of it, Yin Zhen was sucked in by the dead man tree after his death. That's why no one saw his corpse. Zhou roughly understood what was going on, but he still couldn't determine if it was a good or bad thing. The dead man tree was an unknown, terrifying existence. In the past, everything on the phone was under Zhou's control, but now, the dead man tree seemed to have exceeded his control. However, it was useless to worry about this now. It was impossible for him to throw away his phone just because of the existence of the trance. Xia Xianyue, can you tell me what's going on? Xia Dongyue stared at Xia Xianyue, his eyes filled with anger. Xia Xianyue was one of the Xia family's geniuses with the highest chance of advancing to the mythical stage. Her life soul had already reached the perfect stage. The mythical companion egg that the Xia family obtained from the dimensional zone was also given to her due to her outstanding performance. In the end, Xia Xianyue lived up to everyone's expectations. With the Xia family's large amount of resources, she advanced the ancient divine sword to the mythical stage in less than 6 years. It could be said that Xia Xianyue was already a pillar of support for the Xia family. But this time, Xia Xianyue had been severely injured in the wilderness. She was discovered by the Xia family and brought back, saving her life. However, she said that the ancient divine sword was gone. Xia Xianyue was very calm as she recounted what had happened that day. Are you saying you were bitten by a or 3-year-old child and fell unconscious? After you woke up, the ancient divine sword companion beast was gone? Xia Dongyue couldn't believe such an explanation. Xia Xinyue pondered for a moment and said, "Now that I think about it, that young man was right. That child is indeed not human. What's that young man's name? What does he look like? Find him. As long as he's not dead, we have to figure out the truth," Xia Dongyue said as he held back his anger. That was a mythical companion beast. There weren't many mythical companion beasts in the entire Xia family. How could he not be angry that a mythical companion beast was gone just like that? Xia Xinyue knew what Xia Dongyue was suspecting. Thinking of the youth's appearance, Xia Xinyue said, "I didn't take a good look at that young man's appearance back then. I fainted after being bitten. Now, I can't remember that youth's exact appearance. I just feel that he looks very ordinary without any obvious characteristics." Xia Dongyue was even more furious, but there was nothing he could do. After venting his anger, he let Xia Xinyue leave his office. That young man should be one of Wang Mingyuan's 4 students. I wonder what his name is. Xia Xinyue had also been in front of the Holy Tower back then. She naturally recognized Zhou Wan, but she didn't know his name. After returning, Xia Xinyue found the information on the bureau. Soon, she confirmed that the young man she had met was Wang Mingyuan's disciple, Zhou Wan. Forget it. If I hadn't stopped him from killing that little girl, this wouldn't have happened. It has nothing to do with him. He's already in enough trouble now. So why should I do anything unnecessary? Xia Xinyue closed Zhou Wen's information and didn't plan on pursuing the matter further. Zhou Wen successfully returned to Luoyang, and Sheng and Ouyang Lan rushed back from Zhuolu. Before Zhou Wen entered Luoyang City, they took him to Ouyang Lan. "Little fellow, why are you so unlucky? It's fine if Wang Mingyuan goes, but he has harmed the Wang family and his students." Ouyang Lan pulled Zhou Wan and sighed. "How are Hui Haifeng, Zhong Zia, and Jiang Yan?" Zhou Wan hurriedly asked. He hadn't met the 3 of them on the way back. Hui Haifeng's family background is clean, so there shouldn't be any problems. He should be at home now. If there aren't any accidents, he should return to school in a while, Ouyang Lan said. "What about Zhong Zia and Jiang Yan?" Zhou Wan realized that something was amiss. Ouyang Lan shook her head and said, "I don't know. Up to now, there's no news of them. I wonder if they died in the mouths of those dimensional creatures or if they escaped and hid." Zhou Wan heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that. The 2 of them shouldn't have died so easily. As long as they didn't fall into the hands of the Bureau or the 6 families, they would likely have a chance to meet in the future. "Sis Lan, how's the situation at Zhuolu?" Only then did Zhou Wan recall that Ouyang Lan and then Sheng had returned. Had there been any new developments? There's no progress. There are mythical creatures guarding the inner sanctum. Our people can't enter unless Tianzhua can bring his companion beasts over. However, Luoyang isn't stable either. It's impossible for him to leave for so long. Otherwise, Luoyang might become the next holy city, Ouyang Lan said with a sigh. Clearly, she was helpless about this matter. From the looks of it, I can only rely on myself. Zhou Wan knew that he couldn't count on the family. All he could do was think of a way to break into the inner sanctum and find the former principal. Although he knew that the former principal was likely dead, Zhou Wan refused to give up as long as he didn't see his corpse. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.